3. If you're an applicant, we remind you to please keep your presentation to 30 minutes or less. If you're a member of the public that would like to speak, there are yellow cards at the table. Please fill one of these out. We ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. If the item is not listed as a public hearing, that means the public hearing was already held. You're welcome to stay for the vote on it, but it's not open for public comment. First item on the agenda, it has been adjourned. So if you're here for Augusto da Silva, that will not be heard this evening. And if you're here for item number 13, U-Haul Company of Long Island, that also will not be heard this evening. First item on the agenda is Mark Peroxide, I hope that's right, SP 2022-055, southeast corner of Montauk Highway, State Route 27A, Morocco Lane, East Islip, 244 Montauk Highway. Applicant requests landscaping, buffer, parking, dimensional, and other relaxations in connection with an existing multi-tenant commercial building. Good evening.
Good evening to the board. My name is Joseph Clemens, a partner within the firm German and Clemens Architecture PC, located at 3275 Veterans Memorial Highway, Suite B11, Ronkonkoma, New York, 11779. I'm speaking to you this evening on behalf of the applicant and property owner.
Yes, turn around.
I'm speaking to this evening on behalf of the applicant and property owner, Mr. Mark Peroxide of 244 Islip LLC, in regards to the .742 acre parcel situated in the Business 1 zoning district on the southeast corner of Montauk Highway and Morocco Lane, with a property address of 244 Montauk Highway, East Islip, New York, 11730. This application presented before you requests landscaping, buffer, parking, dimensional, and other relaxations in connection with an existing multi-tenant commercial building. To provide a brief history, per the certificate of occupancy, the existing building was initially CO'd in March of 1956, classified as a commercial building of 11 stores. Observing aerial photography dating back to as early as 1962, it appears that for the most part, the site configuration has remained consistent, including the 10 stalls on Morocco Lane. Also, in comparing the current tenants with that of the certificate of occupancy, the majority of the tenant spaces are legally recognized. That poses the question, why are we here? My understanding as to why an application is even being made to the board in an attempt to improve the property is twofold. The current property owner, Mr. Mark Peroxide, who owns numerous properties throughout Long Island, had purchased this property in 2019 with the expectation of improving the lot and running a successful multi-tenant establishment. What he was unaware of was the fact that the previous property owner had failed to make necessary improvements to the property as requested by the Town of Islip Engineering Department over a duration of time, an issue which became inherited. As a result of this, the building department was restricted by engineering to no longer grant permits for any alterations requested on the subject property until such time as the compliant site plan be prepared and approved by the town. As a result of this, a couple of tenant spaces currently sit unoccupied and are boarded up for safety precaution. This in turn makes the property appear less than attractive, something to the contrary of what is sought by the client and assumedly the town. In response, our office had prepared a site plan and had numerous conversations with engineering staff about the design, one which would be acceptable to both their department and the client. One item which was discussed frequently initially was the property owner's request to keep the 10 parking stalls along Morocco. However, the town had improvised and requested that we propose parallel parking along the shopping center instead. These stalls are still subject to review, however, are still highly desirable to the client. If acceptable, this would accommodate an additional 5 stalls, however, are not accounted for with regard to the site's parking calculations. It is likely apparent that the existing site is deficient in a number of the town's current standards, and as such, the reason why we are here before you this evening. The most obvious, however, is parking, something which we are attempting to mitigate by adding additional parking stalls. The intent is for the front parking lot configuration to remain, while a new parking lot be proposed at the rear of the facility, providing for an additional 14 stalls, bringing the total on-site parking to 39 spaces. Using the requirements as set forth by the subdivision and land development regulations, technically 91 parking stalls would be required, a request for a relaxation of 57%. It should be noted once again, however, that this is an existing facility and the majority of the tenants are legally recognized. The Italian restaurant and Drift Inn are the spaces which would require the largest parking demand, both of which are CO'd. This application set before you this evening is not requesting any specific tenant or use, simply requesting the improvements to beautify the site and bring it into general conformance to the best of our ability. The proposed site provides for a total of 4,096 square feet of landscaping, approximately 12.7% of the site. However, only 731 square feet, or 2.3%, count towards the acceptable landscaping, not including buffer areas. As such, a front yard and overall landscaping relaxation is required. It is also requested that the minimum 8-foot requirement of landscaping along street frontages be reduced to 0 feet along Montauk Highway and 4 feet along Meroke Lane, so as to allow for the existing parking to remain. The existing parking will also require dimensional relaxations to remain, or further stalls could be forfeited. The front parking area would be improved with upgraded drainage, as it does not appear to have any that currently exists. The back parking area would be improved from the existing dirt lot, which presently exists, to asphalt with concrete curbing, as well as include sufficient drainage. Although requiring relief, new landscaping is proposed, specifically an approximate 10-foot wide buffer along the residential property to the south, and a varying depth buffer to the residential property to the east is proposed, improved with a new buffer fence and double row of 7-foot high arborvitaes and deciduous trees. New street trees are proposed as well, where able, along Montauk Highway. The improvements proposed would greatly enhance the site. I would also like to note that the property owner had attempted to file a building permit application for a facade alteration to further improve the property and its aesthetics. Comments have been received during initial intake review, which still need to be addressed. However, it was explained that no permits would be issued until such time as an approved site plan is finalized. As such, no further improvements can be made until the site issue is resolved, and therefore planning board approval is obtained, so we can continue to finalize the site application in an attempt for a hopeful approval. As you can see from the plan set before you, my client simply wishes to establish and maintain a property which conforms with the general intent of the Town of Islip subdivision and land development regulations, while also maintaining the existing building and its current uses. The improvements requested will inevitably become a benefit to the community and enhance the overall aesthetic of the neighborhood. As stated, new landscaping will be added, which will enhance the look of the site and conform more closely with the Town of Islip standards. This proposal will be a vast improvement from the property which presently exists there today. As such, we would respectfully request that you grant the requested relaxations presented before you, so my client can convert this dated site into a pleasant neighbor, and we can continue to enhance the East Islip community. We were sent draft conditions earlier today. If approved by this board, the client had agreed to them as well. And of course, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. I don't have any cards on this application. Did anybody come in late who wishes to be heard? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Mr. Gonzalez for a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a Business 1 zoned 3/4 acre parcel, currently improved with an approximately 10,900 square foot multi-tenant commercial building built and CO'd in 1956 as 11 separate units. 2 of those were combined in 1964, and now the building has 10 inside of it. Various changes of uses have been permitted since then, with the most recent being the Drift Inn in 2017. 2 of the current units are vacant, which were the former pharmacy and dry cleaners. The rear of the building currently is a substandard gravel parking area and provides almost zero green space, which is in drastic need of improvement. This condition has essentially existed since the 50s. A site plan was approved for the refuse enclosure and ADA accessibility in the front parking lot only in 2017. However, based on the condition of the rear parking lot and how the site was operating given that condition, the town purportedly directed the previous owner to submit a full site plan for overall site improvements, which would include the rear parking area. In addition to that, the building department has restricted the owner from obtaining any new building permits for the property until a new site plan is approved to address these site issues. The current owner submitted a special permit application for a minor restaurant in 2021. However, after the public hearing, the application was withdrawn. In August of 22, the current site plan application was submitted and is before this board tonight. And in November of 22, a stop work order was issued for unpermitted plumbing and HVAC work within one of the existing units. The current proposal includes new drainage for the front parking lot, a new parking lot in the rear of the building to provide an additional 14 parking stalls, perimeter buffer plantings, site lighting, ADA upgrades, and more. There are 10 existing parking stalls, which are along the west side of the building on Meroke Lane, perpendicular to the building. The current proposal, after discussions with the town, are to revise those stalls and turn them into 5 parallel stalls alongside Maroki Lane. The Traffic Safety Division did state they had no issue as long as the rearranged stalls do not encroach further onto Maroki Lane travelway. In addition, they are requesting no parking signs be added to the west side of that street across from the property to discourage vehicles from parking on the other side and reducing the travelway width, which could impact emergency vehicle flow. If the board feels these stalls should be removed, then the plan would be redesigned to provide a traditional sidewalk, grass verge, street trees, and more. The site does require various relaxations. However, much of these are current conditions, specifically the landscaping and buffer. Actual site plan improves the current conditions by adding more parking and a fully planted buffer along the south and east of the property. Staff has prepared draft conditions based on the relaxations requested, as well as some public comment that was received via email in regards to refuse pickup and delivery drop-off for the site. If there are any additional comments from the board or any public comments, the conditions could be amended tonight, or the decision could be reserved to work with the applicant to revise them and bring the application back at a later date.
Thank you. Can you just speak to, my one concern is I know the shopping center well, and eating the Italian restaurant there or the pizza place, is the majority of the problem with parking tends to be when the bar is operating in the evening. My concern with the parking lot in the back with only a 13-foot buffer against that single-family residence behind it is that the traffic that's going to come in and out of there, it's going to be late at night going in and out of there, which obviously cars parking with their headlights up against that house is not something that I'd be in favor of.
Yeah. And to address that, I mean, I'm sure, if anything, I can't speak on it personally, but cars may park back there now. I don't know. In terms of the improvements, realistically, there would be a 6-foot-high stockade fence which blocks the view, as well as double row of arborvitaes, and you have the 13 feet. And driving past the site earlier this morning, that neighbor also has pine trees literally running along her property line as well. So I'm sure that mitigates it to a certain degree. So I would anticipate realistically there probably wouldn't be much light that trespasses. In terms of noise or anything like that, I can't really speak upon it. I'm not as familiar. I don't go to the area at nighttime, but I would say that the parking would probably be mitigated by the improvements.
Tanner, what would you feel about if we land banked or just did not allow those parking against the residential property, maybe did parallel parking, and then also possibly restricting the parking in the rear to employees so it's not people coming in and out continuously, it's just those showing up for a shift and then leaving at the end of a shift?
So you're talking about the 6 southerly stalls nearest the buffer. Basically, we would land bank those. And then you're talking about keeping the parallel stalls on Maroki or getting rid of those?
I'm talking about adding parallel stalls where you have the ones that are facing the house in the back.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You can still get a couple more parking spots out of it.
Okay.
But I want to do this. We did get a card on this, so I'm going to ask this person to come up while you're looking at that.
Yes.
And is Susan Smith here? If you want to come up quickly. I'm just going to have Ms. Smith come up first and speak. She came in late, and then we'll come back to you.
The house you were talking about, the residence, is mine, 15 Maroki. I'm the first house. I am directly behind the shopping center. And right now, there is a stockade fence there at 6 feet tall. And I'd like to tell you all that that stockade fence is barely standing because of all the people who go in and out and smash into it. The previous owner, we have addressed many times, please fix, and my husband goes out and he buys the spigots and he goes over with hammer and nails and he fixes it because it comes, usually where they hit it, it comes right into our garbage corral, which thankfully is there because right next to that is my garage. So we're talking about 4 feet away from hitting my garage all the time, every day. The trees that are up so far are mine. The noise level is fine. I don't have any complaints really. It's once in a blue moon that we have complaints about noise. But I'm happy that they want to do something. I just don't know how much closer they want to get to me. And they shouldn't be parking there right now at all. They do. And it is quite a nuisance. And the other thing I'd like to address is the bamboo, but I don't think it's an ordinance in the town of Islip. I'm not sure. I know town of Babylon has something about it, but I have a backyard that is now becoming full of bamboo, from the bamboo that is by the dumpster that is now growing onto my property. So that property has bamboo, and now I have bamboo. I don't understand where the 25 to 10 goes either. Right now, I'm supposed to have 25 feet between my property line and what, the end of the building?
25 feet from your property line
To,
to where they start. They should have a 25-foot buffer. There should be a buffer of 25 feet.
to the building.
From your property line, 25 feet in from your property line onto their property line, there should be a buffer.
Oh, that's like the back door of the building. And now you want to put parking spots back there? It's not 100,
It is 42 feet from
42
your
feet.
property line to the nearest part of the building. And that's the extension that is on the south side.
And you would like to bring that 42 feet to 10?
No, so right now there is no buffer on the property. It's just the gravel parking area.
Right,
The requirement for the current standard in the town is to have a 25-foot vegetated buffer from a residential property line, which is yours, going north is the current requirement.
right.
It's never existed that way on this property. So technically, they need a relaxation from that, but they're actually adding 10 feet of plantings that don't exist. So
Does that show on the drawing that's up there? Can you point it out so she sees what we're adding? What's being added?
I mean, bottom line, just like,
So why don't we do this? Why don't you come back up, explain exactly what it is that you're doing on the property line?
I'm going to oppose those sticks that are on that back up to mine.
So realistically, what we were proposing along that southern property line is we show deciduous trees basically every 20 feet on center, which is standard. And then infilled in between would be a double row of arborvitaes, basically 7 feet in height is what was proposed on plan, which is also pretty common. And that would be what infills the buffer. So right now, as Tanner had said, right now there is nothing in place. So people, if they are parking their cars, probably can get directly up against the fence and probably could cause damage. Where realistically, per the plan that's proposed, it's on average about 10 feet. So you'd have a curb that stops 10 feet in front of that fence. So that in any event, if anybody's going to hit that fence, they have to do so willingly, I would say.
Mr. Fraggiari?
Just for clarification, so you're adding a new fence along that border with the residential property?
I
And then
believe,
you're adding double rows of arborvitae?
yes, sir.
And then after that would be either the drive entrance or a parking area?
Exactly.
So if someone were to hit that fence, they would have to go through a double row of arborvitae before
They would have to
hit
go
the
through
fence.
trees, plants, over a curb. It would be some work.
Also, you alluded to, and the speaker stated that there are people parking back there now. Do you know if it's patrons to the shopping center, or is it employees that are parking in the rear?
I don't know. When I drove there this morning, there really wasn't anybody back there. There was one truck back there. I went maybe around 11 o'clock, and there was the rest of the parking lot was empty. So there really wasn't anybody really parked back there, aside from, I don't know. I don't know who's parking back there.
So, I mean, I would support the project with the addition of the new fence, with the adding of the plantings that you're going to do there, but also not putting in those 6 spots that go up against the house. Mr. Bruno?
I have concerns like you do, Mr. Chairman, but I'm thinking the simplest way to handle this is if the 6 spaces become, if employees, there's certainly going to be 6 employees here. If we make
Your mic's
those
off.
6 spaces employee. I'll yell loud.
Yeah.
If we make those 6 spaces employee spaces, then they're not going in and out all day. The employee comes in, parks, probably sits for 8 hours and then goes back. So I think the impact, rather than lose the spaces in total, it'll have far less of an impact. So that's kind of my suggestion on that.
The only other alternative would be, like the chairman said, would be to make them parallel stalls, but you'd probably only be able to get 2 to 3. So you would lose, 3 to 4 stalls back there, although they would be turned so that the headlights would not be facing the southerly side.
I think the biggest concern probably is the parking. So
I'm not sure where the board stands on this. Is there anything else you want to add?
no, definitely. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
My position would be to land bank them. It's already 13 feet instead of 25 feet. It is a residence behind there. We're at least going to,
Go land bank them, and then if they're necessary.
if necessary, you can come back before us, but certainly adding in the plantings and adding in the fence would make a big difference for the neighbor who's there. And land banking them, if you do need them, you can come back.
Yeah, if we don't have a choice.
Have that discussion, and we'll hear from the resident then again if things have gotten better with the fence and the plantings. There's nothing further. Is there a motion?
Make a motion. I'll make a motion that we close this hearing and grant this application, subject to the conditions, with one addition, that the 6 parking spaces adjacent to the residential homes to the south, to the north, to the south, we land bank those, and you come back to us if they're needed.
Motion by Mr. Ruggieri to close the public hearing, grant the application. The only change to it is that the 6 parking spots to the south of the property up against the house to the south would be land banked. Is there a second to that motion? By Mr. Bruno, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Thank you. Got another one if you want me to do it.
Yeah, we're going to call you. Just stay up there. What number is this?
Number 11?
I'm going to go.
No, it's number 12.
I'm going to go to item 12 while you're still up here. It's planning board decision item, Lighthouse Shores LLC, PB 2023-029, east side of West Lighthouse Walk, number 110, Kismet 110 Lighthouse Prom. Applicant requests planning board's permission to modify architectural elevations pursuant to TC 5370.
Good evening to the board once again. My name is Joseph Clemens, a partner in the firm German Clemens Architecture PC, located at 3275 Veterans Memorial Highway, Suite B11, Ronkonkoma, New York, 11779. I'm speaking to you this evening in regards to the parcel located at 110 East Lighthouse Walk in Kismet. An application was initially presented before this board under reference number CZ 2020-027, which had requested a change of zone from residency AA to general service E in order to expand the gross floor area of an existing hotel back on January 20th of 2021, followed by a decisional hearing on April 28th, where we had been granted planning board approval to proceed. The application was inevitably approved by the town board and obtained effective date of December 19th, 2021. Thereafter, we made a presentation to the Zoning Board of Appeals requesting front yard relief for the proposed second-story addition. It was stated that the zoning board was mindful of the fact that the West Lighthouse Walk is in the vicinity of the subject parcel, is improved entirely with single-family homes, and the East Lighthouse frontage has commercial and non-residential neighbors in the forms of restaurants, a town park, and a ferry dock. With this being the case, it was the board's opinion that the proposed front yard setback on East Lighthouse Walk was reasonable and would have no adverse effect on the neighboring non-residential uses. However, in desiring to minimize the impact of the second floor on West Lighthouse frontage, the board did not allow for the setback relief, but rather grant permission for the second story in that location to maintain no less than 25 feet in the minimum required in General Service E district. As a result, the floor plan was altered to accommodate a stairwell at the rear of the space for the end unit closest to West Lighthouse, while maintaining the 25-foot minimum front yard setback. Per the approved conditions, it stated that the submitted architectural drawings with regards to the elevations shall be in substantial conformance to the plans prepared by German and Clemens, and which dated January 13th of 2021. It also stated that the approved detailed architectural elevations shall supersede the submitted change of zone conceptual elevations for the purpose of regulating the subject property. Any future changes to the approved architectural elevations that are not in substantial conformance with the above shall require review and approval of the planning board. The planning board shall consider the nature and character of the surrounding area, public hearing records, and architectural specific components for the comprehensive plan. The elevations have been adjusted to accommodate the rear addition and setback requirements as required by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Overall, the aesthetic is fairly consistent with the prior approval. Material and color samples had been provided to planning staff with regard to siding and roofing material, and recommend colors had been agreed upon and are noted on the recently provided preliminary plans. Siding will be a certain T 555 cedar impressions, seagrass in color, matching the existing first floor. The roof shingles are to be Timberline HTZ, Nantucket Morning in color. And as you can see from the plans set before you, the design is consistent with that of the original approval. The improvements requested would become a benefit to the community and continue to enhance the aesthetic of the area. As such, we respectfully request that you grant this application once again.
Whose is this? Oh, no, Mr. Colgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Mr. Clemens was pretty thorough. Just to summarize the staff's position, the modified elevations are still substantially similar to the ones the board saw and approved, namely with regards to the gable roof. Staff has no objection to the changes, provided that the applicant utilize the seagrass coloring for the siding and Nantucket Morning shingles for the roof, in keeping with the nautical nature of the area.
Any questions from the board? Any further from the applicant? Is there a motion? Moriarty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd move to grant the application as presented. And Tanner, Sean, are there any conditions that are added?
It's simply that they utilize nautical colors, so the samples that they provided the planning department was seagrass coloring for the siding and Nantucket Morning shingles for the roof.
Okay, subject to the seagrass colorings. Thank you.
Motion by Mr. Moriarty to grant the application subject to the seaglass and the Nantucket as stated by Mr. Colgan. Is there a second? Second. Who's my second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Thank you very much.
Granted, thank
Have a
you.
great night.
Because the name of one from the right.
Item 3 on the agenda, planning board application, public hearing, Kelly Bennett, PB 2023-022, southwest corner of Montauk Highway, New York State Route 27A, Monell Avenue, Islip 454 Main Street. Applicant requests a planning board special permit for a mixed-use building in the business district pursuant to 68-257.1G. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of the application. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the applicant, Joseph F. Bazell, the firm is Bazell, Blander, and Visconti, 535 Broad Hollow Road, Suite B4 in Melville. The application seeks converting one existing vacant retail unit into one apartment in a mixed-use building in downtown Islip. The property is 454 Main Street. It's at the southwest corner of Main and Montel. It's zoned BD. It's in the middle of the downtown. As properties in downtowns are often small, the subject is 5,113 square feet. It's improved with a mixed-use building constructed in 1939, stores on the first floor, 4 apartments on the second. As is common in downtowns, the building takes up most of the property. The principal entrances and the entrances to the 2 existing healthy establishments is on Main Street. They access off Main, and people come and go from the sidewalk on Main. While the building is 2 stories, there is a small 1-story portion in the rear that is along Montel. If you take that 1-story section and a little bit of the first floor and a 2-story section, you get 735 square feet, give or take, which is what this application is about tonight. We're in the middle of a pedestrian-oriented downtown, buildings at sidewalk, many mixed-use buildings, on-street parking. Adjacent to the rear is the fire department. That property wraps around this property on the west side. There's a small but very nice landscape strip which screens that parking from Main. Across Monell is a dry cleaner, which I always remember because it was there when I was a child, with the drop-off and the overhang. Behind that dry cleaner becomes residential. Down from the firehouse, it becomes residential. The rest of the Main Street corridor is commercial. The one-story portion of that building was originally constructed as a commercial use. It's been vacant. It has not been in a healthy situation in some time. My clients purchased a building at the end of last year, and they're in the process of improving it. One portion is to take that vacant and rather unsightly commercial unit and convert it into an apartment. That unit does not have access on Main, and we are off the beaten path for pedestrian access in downtown Islip. As you move south, it becomes all residential. So converting to an apartment does fit in. It's a mixed-use building now. We're only adding one unit. There is no enlargement of the building in any direction. The footprint remains the same. It is not being enlarged upward, so it's the exact height that it is. We're simply converting existing space. The commercial portion of this building is over 40%. As far as parking, if this was calculated as retail, it's at 150, it's about 4.9 spaces. As an apartment, it's 1.75. So that actually improves the parking, reduces the demand on commercial parking, particularly during the peak periods. No environmentally sensitive property, no effect on the fire department, the dry cleaner, or any other property. It doesn't generate any noise. Is it a positive conversion of this particular site? Small but positive. The site, if you drive down Monell, is noticeable. Dark windows help know downtown. We've been through conditions with the planning department. My clients are comfortable with them. They did ask me to note there is one vacant tenancy at the site now. An existing tenant moved out recently. Depending on what tenant they get, there has been some interest in a breakfast establishment, so they may need to seek an adjustment to the hours of operation. But if so, that can be handled at the time that application comes in. Again, positive development, existing mixed-use building, adding one apartment actually improves the parking for this generation for this particular site, as well as the parking required for this particular site. In character with the southerly portion of the side street, will improve the appearance and function of the site and improve the property and the surrounding area.
Thank you. We'll go to public hearing and staff report, and we'll come back for questions.
Okay.
Mr. Ruggieri.
Paula Alms.
All right, I'll make it really brief. I didn't even know this was happening, but I was very aware of what was happening at the Islip movie theater. So I just want you guys to know, you want to talk shop local, but you're giving it away. You're giving all the local shops away and turning them into apartments. Nobody's going to come downtown Main Street because there'll be nothing to shop at. There'll be no places to park. You're destroying Islip. And I've been a taxpayer forever. I'm in my house on Smith Avenue. I live 63 Smith Avenue, right down the road from the Islip movie theater. Already my street's going to be a disaster. It's a small, narrow road. I cannot believe you guys approved 23 apartments in the Islip movie theater and a restaurant. Where are these people going to park? And now you're going to add more apartments. It's got to stop. Nobody's going to come to Islip. There'll be no reason because you can't park. There'll be no stores. So please, stop the apartments. Bring on local people to shop and restaurants and things like for kids. And you're also, the fire department is definitely going to be affected because they come out on Monell. And you're going to have extra cars parking. I know he says you're going to increase parking. I don't believe that because you already lost a ton of parking when you put those 23 apartments in at the movie theater. They're going to be down my block in front of my house. I won't be able to have my people, my kids, and my father park in front of my own house. We're going to look like queens. You got to stop this. You got to stop these apartments. And that's it. I didn't even know about this. Nobody, I just happened to see the sign when I walked to my local cleaners and I saw, what's that public notice? You can't keep building apartments. What's this? This means the next one is going to be another 3 levels and stuff, and you're just going to keep it going.
That's the only card I have on this. Anybody else come in late who wish to be heard on this application? Not seeing anyone, I'm turning to Ms. Wozniak for a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The property is located on the southwest corner of Montauk Highway and Monell Avenue in downtown Islip, and it's improved with a 2-story mixed-use building that has retail on the first floor and 4 apartments on the second floor. The applicant's looking to convert one of the retail stores on the first floor in the back into a 1-bedroom apartment. This conversion will slightly reduce the required parking and will still allow the building to maintain the required 30% commercial component. This is an older building built in the early 1900s, and it's a legal non-conforming mixed-use building. So this application will also help legalize the existing apartments on the second floor. This is a minor change to an existing building, and there's no anticipated negative impacts. Therefore, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Ms. Ruggieri.
The applicant, you stated that this retail store has been vacant.
The particular one we're talking about here, yes.
And for
There's
how long?
another tenancy that was vacant well before my clients purchased it. It's not, you can't walk into it from Main. You have to round the corner. That's not a pedestrian corridor. There was another tenancy in this building where the tenant moved out recently. That will be replaced with another retail.
That's going to stay
commercial tenant.
retail.
Yeah, or commercial. I don't know what
Yeah.
the tenant's going to be, but there's no intention to turn that residential, and it wouldn't work. You step out from that unit right onto Main Street.
Right.
On this one, it's all the way around the back of the building. It's very different. And given its size and location, it's not really viable in a downtown environment unless the pedestrian corridor continued on the side street, which here it doesn't. The side street becomes residential.
My question's answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions from the board? Ms. Moriarty?
Thank you. Just to clarify, you're talking about an increase of 1 new apartment unit, correct?
Yeah, we're giving up 1 commercial unit and converting it to residential.
And that's the rear unit?
Rear unit.
Yeah, I see it.
The
Okay,
2 units on Main stay.
got it. What's the game plan with the back of the lot? It seems like there's space back there. Is that being
It's not-
upgraded? What kind of landscaping
It
are you
has to be
talking about?
cleaned up.
Yeah, I agree.
But my clients haven't even owned it a year yet. And you can't park back there. It's not dimensionally big enough. And even to put 1 parking space in the driveway would block up access to the rear of the building, which would include emergency services, garbage collection, or maintenance on the building or its systems.
I mean, it seems like it's a fairly, I mean, I know the entrance out is fairly small, but there seems like a larger space
It
once you
opens
go
up,
into
but if
it.
you think about it, a parking space is generally 19 feet, and you need at least 23, 24 behind it. And that would be if you literally went to the wall of the building. So if you had even a 5-foot sidewalk, you've now outstripped the dimensions.
Right, but have we, Tanner, is this your application? Oh, Kelly, sorry. Have we confirmed that, Kelly, that it's impossible to park in the rear lot?
I think the access aisle is too small to get back there because you'd need it 2 ways for someone to come in and out at the same time, and it's just too narrow there. It looks, it's funny on the survey, I couldn't see, but it looks like it's like 10 feet, not even maybe.
Okay.
It's like not even a big car could really fit back there.
Okay, but what, is there any other game plan for back there then? You're just going to leave it as is?
Well,
or
it's got to
gonna
get cleaned,
upgraded?
it's got to get cleaned up,
I agree.
you know.
Point I'm raising.
There is an oil tank back there. There are AC units back there. We have to put some type of refuse system back there. That has to be worked out, but it's got to be screened. So yes, though, it's got to get cleaned up. As to parking back there, the building is 17 and a half feet, is maybe 10. That gives you 27, even without any rear yard buffer or any buffer against the building, and not including the AC, the cellar entrance, or the oil tank, you don't have a parking stall in the backup aisle. But it does have to get cleaned up, and it does, as far as any kind of landscaping, obviously you couldn't put it in the drive aisle. because you'd narrow the drive aisle to the point where you'd make it unworkable. But as you get further west on the site, there is some room for that.
Right.
That is the fire department. You know, it's not a single-family home, but there is some room as you get into that area of the site. But it's not very visible, and it's very small and compact. And there are things that need to stay.
And where's refuse container?
That, right now, the garbage truck can't maneuver back there, so they are put in smaller containers in the garbage truck. The garbage men wheel it out and put it into the truck. As to where those containers would stay, that has to get worked out with planning.
Yeah, I would just, I mean, I agree with Mr. Moriarty on this, and Ms. Wozniak, I think we need a condition, or we need some plan in terms of what goes on in the back.
I would agree.
I would propose reserving until you resolve that with the applicant and bring it back for approval would be how I see it. But Mr. Fraggiaro, you want something?
I was going to suggest that we revise condition number 6, where we're already requesting that the owner agrees to submit elevations to the planning department. In addition to elevations, they should submit plans for the rear.
So if it's approved this evening, it's going to be subject to a revised condition number 6 as worded by the planning department. If
Yeah,
you're
look,
not
that's
agreeing-
got to get done anyway. We understand that, so that's
And if you're
fine.
not agreeing with the language from the planning department, then you have to come back before us.
Right, and I think we can work it out with them.
Is there a motion? Mr. Fraggiaro.
I'll make a motion that we close this public hearing and grant this application, subject to the revised condition number 6 that needs to be worked out between the applicant and planning.
There's a motion to close the public hearing, grant the application, subject to revised condition number 6 to be worked out by the planning department and agreed to. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
I'll do it after this. Planning board application, public hearing, Phil Francello, PB 2023-026, south side of 2nd Street, 770 feet west of Smithtown Avenue, Ronkonkoma, 950 South 2nd Street. Applicant requests a planning board special permit for the sale, lease, or rental of heavy construction vehicles and related equipment in the Industrial 1 District pursuant to 68-340.1L. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of the application.
Good evening, Board. Gail Rosen, Rabinowitz, Galena and Rosen, 94 Willis Avenue, Mineola, New York. I'm a counsel for the owner, Stephen Long. The applicant, Phil Francello, was the architect of record who has elected not to continue with us. So if my client can rely on his application, we would do so at this point. Alternatively, we would ask for a new hearing date in order to retain a new architect. He has abandoned the client and the application.
You don't want to do anything tonight? So we're adjourning this application?
Unless we can rely on the application as submitted by Mr. Francello, then yes.
Ms. Wozniak?
I don't know if there are no questions.
I mean, they're allowed to proceed if they want to. We have the site plan that that architect submitted. If you have a new one and you'd rather us start with that one, once you submit it, we could hear it, or we could go off of this one if you don't have it. It's up to your client.
Well,
Really?
we can,
We can, but we don't. I mean, I think he has it on here, though. It's up to them, you know? I'm fine with it.
Yeah, the problem is it's difficult to give comments because there's not a lot of detail on this plan. It's just shaded, so we don't know landscaping, entrances, parking,
and
loading docks.
we were hoping until the last moment that things would resolve itself and he would be here. I'm an attorney. I involved because of the summonses that led to the application being made, but I'm not an architect and I can't speak to his plans.
I mean, I think we should adjourn it to a later date is my recommendation. Do you want to come back to that?
That's fine, and we will engage
There's not much for us to look at to understand what's going
a
on.
new architect. Thank you.
Is there a motion? Mr. Matamore? Let's leave the public hearing open and just adjourn to a later date. So motion, is that okay? Mr. Matamore, to leave the public hearing open and adjourn to a date to be determined. Is there a second to that? Second by Mr. Moriarty, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions?
Thank you.
We are. I'm going to take number, Christina Kohler, if you want to come up, I have number 8, Miguel Garzone, CZ 2022-004, southeast corner of Brentwood Road and 2nd Street, Brentwood, 1785 and 1779 Brentwood Road. Applicant requests a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 4752 to permit the demolition of the existing building for an office use. Site plan modification may be required as part of the application. Mr. Nicola?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking me out of order. Appearing on behalf of the applicant, Eugene L. D. Nicola, 200 Railroad Avenue, Sayville, New York. Just as a quick recap, on October 26, 2022, a public information hearing was held before the board with regard to the applicant's request to terminate or modify previously imposed covenants and restrictions related to TC 4752 in order to demolish all existing improvements on the site and permit the construction of a new office building. The board reserved its decision pending a building department inspection of the structure commonly known as 1785 Brentwood Road, Brentwood. On November 28, 2022, the structure was inspected by the Islip Chief Building Inspector, and following his inspection, he indicated and discussed with my associate who was present at the inspection that the building is not, that the cost to renovate the structure, which is in seriously deteriorated condition, would be more than the fair market value of the property. The building does not have any historic pedigree, and no historic designation of the building has been located. Deed covenants and restrictions have been discussed with the planning staff, have requested modifications, and I believe that a resolution of any concerns between the applicant and the request of the staff will be agreed upon. Building elevations have been a major discussion item for the proposed development, and I believe that the final elevations are fully accepted, and I will defer to Mr. Colgan's planning report to the board, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Colgan for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application was previously heard on October 26 last year, and the decision was reserved in order to allow the building division to review the engineering report and conduct an inspection of the building. The building division reviewed the report and conducted a site inspection. The findings of that inspection included significant water and termite damage, rot within the locust post foundation, and structural deficiencies throughout, and salvaging the building according to the building division is technically infeasible. Given that it does not appear feasible to preserve the existing structure based on the report and inspection, the planning staff acknowledges that preservation appears improbable. The proposed building elevations are generally contextual with what we believe the original house looked like, and it also includes key elements such as the turret and the semicircular windows. This type of rebuild would be consistent with older structures before the boards that also could not be salvaged, such as the LaGrange Inn application in West Islip and the Wheeler House in Hopog. The current application affords an opportunity to pay homage to the original structure without waiting for the building to completely deteriorate and turn into an eyesore for the community. The staff acknowledges that a rebuild is not an ideal solution. However, based on the circumstances, it appears to be the most optimal. Therefore, the staff recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached covenants and restrictions to be worked out between the applicant and staff.
Any questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Mr. Moriarty?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would make a motion to grant the application subject to the conditions. And Mr. Nicola, you indicated there's certain conditions going back and forth at this point between yourself and planning?
There are negotiations, yes. With regard to the CNRs?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Subject to an agreeable set of CNRs agreed
And
to.
we're pretty much in agreement.
Okay.
Very minor.
Okay, so subject to the CNRs as negotiated with the planning staff.
So motion to grant the application, subject to the CNRs being agreed to between planning staff and the applicant. Second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you so much. Members of the board, thank you. Have a good evening, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Town Board application, public hearing, Steel Campus LLC and Marcus ISP Holdings LLC as tenants in common, CZ 2023-014, east side of Carlton Avenue, County Route 17, approximately 1,228 feet north of Courthouse Drive, Central Islip, 300 Carlton Avenue. Applicant requests change of zone from PDD multifamily to PDD retail services, PDD office, and PDD senior citizen, and from PDD educational campus to PDD retail services, and a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 5363 in order to construct an additional 281 apartments for a total of 645 apartments on site, 81 senior citizens condominiums, a market, 2 medical offices, restaurants, and retail space. Site plan modifications may be required as part of the application. Good evening, Mr. Kennedy.
I'll keep it. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the applicant, Brian Kennedy, partner with the law firm of Forcelli, Deegan, Tirana. Offices at 333 Earl Ovington Boulevard, Suite 1010, Uniondale, New York. We have an easel. I just ask for one moment while we prepare the easel for the board and the members of the audience to review. In the interim, I provided copies of renderings, the site plan, which will be discussed this evening.
I've never seen a special easel carrier.
Over to the side.
Okay. They don't look anything like the rest of the site. I don't like it. It's customary. It's customary for Gary.
All right, Mr. Kennedy, why don't we get going? They can get that going while you're speaking.
You got it. Good evening. Thank you for your patience, members of the board. As I indicated, I am Brian Kennedy, attorney for the applicant. You will hear testimony this evening from Courtney Riley and David Wortman from VHB, as well as Russell Moore, member of Steel Equities. Now, I'll start briefly. I want to give the board a history of this application. Now, in 2017, the applicants began their due diligence on redeveloping the former NYIT campus, which sat vacant after the college closed their operations at the site. At that time, the applicants began their community outreach process, which they have continued to this day. Now, during their initial meetings with the community, the applicants proposed an industrial use at the site. The community expressed a strong desire to preserve all existing buildings at the site and utilize them as a modern residential development. The applicant listened. They completely modified their plan for this site to meet community concern and designed what is now known as the Belmont at Eastview, a modern luxury development. The focal point of this development was the adaptive reuse of the 14 existing buildings at the site. Now, this initial application required a change of zone from the existing planned development district educational campus to planned development district multifamily subdistrict. That application was heard by this board in September of 2020, and the new zoning was adopted shortly thereafter. Now, once adopted, the applicant began site work and has fully renovated several of the existing buildings. They expect to complete the initial renovation by the middle of next year. Now, that initial change of zone application did not include the parcel that houses the vacant NYIT Chapel parcel. That 4-acre parcel was before this board earlier this year to secure a special use permit to allow the NYIT Community Free Clinic to relocate from its existing location at 267 Carlton Avenue to that site on the applicant's property. Now, with the application before the board this evening, we're seeking a change of zone and modification to previously imposed covenants of restriction. Okay. Now, I'm going to take the board through the 4 parcels and the 4 newly created sites. We'll start with the chapel parcel. As indicated earlier, that was not subject to the initial change of zone application and therefore retains its initial zoning of the educational campus sub-district. It does benefit from a special use permit. Now, the applicant today is seeking to change this zone to the retail service district to adaptively reuse the existing chapel building and construct a market at the northern portion of that parcel. The proposed layout of this site, as it is before the board today, does not require any relief before the board. Now, moving on to the larger parcel, the 83.4 acre parcel to the south that houses those 14 existing buildings, that entire parcel is zoned multifamily at this point. This application seeks to modify some portions of that parcel to create additional housing units and new retail and medical uses. Now, Courtney Riley from VHB will take you guys through that site plan in detail, but I'm just going to give you a brief overview of each of those newly created sites. Site 2 on the site plan is located just south of Gullhaven Drive and houses the former Robbins Hall building. The applicant is seeking a change of zone to the retail service sub-district, and the existing Robbins Hall building will be utilized as a restaurant. 2 new buildings will be constructed to house new retail and food service tenants. The proposed layout of Site 2 will require planning board relief to reduce the required setback from Carlton Avenue for the existing building and the proposed buildings, as well as reduce the required buffer to residential. Site 3 is located on the southwest portion of that site. The applicant is seeking a new zoning of PDD office to house medical offices at the site. The current layout that is before this board will require planning board relief for increased FAR to reduce the required buffer within the PDD between sub-districts and to reduce total landscaping. Now, the largest portion of this site, Site 4, will be 62 acres that will not require a change of zone, that will remain in the multifamily sub-district. The application seeks a modification of the previously imposed covenants and restrictions to add 281 additional units spread across the site. Now, I will note that even with the addition of those 281 units, the current density falls well below what is permitted at the site. The proposed layout of that site will require planning board relief to permit a building height of 43 feet. Now, we'll move on to Site 4A, which is the southeast portion of that site. That is currently designated in the multifamily zoning district. It will be rezoned to be in the senior citizens sub-district. and restrict occupancy to seniors 55 and older. Now, for the last several years, members of the community have requested more senior housing and ownership opportunities in this area. The current proposal here is to construct 81 condominium units for sale to members of the community. The site will include a private clubhouse for these residents and a gatehouse restricting access to owners and their guests. This proposed layout that you are viewing today will require planning board relief to increase the building height to 43 feet. Now, Russ Moore will speak to the proposed amenities at this site later on, but I will, before I turn this over to Courtney, note that the proposed project before this board will help address a housing crisis that exists here on Long Island, whether it be federal, state, or local government. Everyone can agree that there is a desperate need to provide additional affordable housing on Long Island. The vast majority of the proposed units here are studio and one-bedroom units, and 10% of all units created will be designated as affordable housing units. Now, with that, I'll turn it over to Courtney, who will take you through the site plan in detail.
Courtney Riley, VHB Engineering, 100 Motor Parkway, Suite 350, Hauppauge, New York. Sworn. Have to be sworn in? Okay, sure. Good evening. My name is Courtney Riley. I'm the Director of Land Development at VHB Engineering with offices in Hauppauge, New York. We were retained by the applicant to prepare a master plan and to look at this project holistically. The key components that the owners really wanted to accomplish was community, connectivity, and sustainability. And to transform this mixed-use development, we needed to initiate zoning change to align with the area to the set of objectives. This included, again, the enhanced walkability, the variety of housing options, preservation of existing buildings, the adaptive use of reuse of buildings, and the community areas. And we aim to create this environment for a live, work, and shopping experience where they could both coexist. So the past several months, the owner and the design team have met with the civics, the planning department, and the engineering department to collaborate on what this could be. We first looked at a traffic impact study and produced this traffic impact study when we submitted this to the town, had the consultant take a look at it, and the town hired an outside consultant. And based on that analysis, there was some changes that the applicant has made in coordination with the town. One of the biggest items is a traffic signal at Sunburst and Eastview Drive, which is further off the page. It's not even on the page that you see. And one of those identified was to make that better. The other was on Eastview Drive and Gull Haven. We are proposing to restripe Eastview Drive that allows cars, when they come into Gull Haven, to access the ease onto the left turn lane. When we focused about the retail, we looked into how we can make them not big boxes, but a smaller retail. So I'm going to start similar to our attorney with Site 1. Site 1, again, being on the north side. This site has two buildings on it. Building A one-story potential market, and Building B, an adapted reuse from the Chapel Building, which will be converted into a medical office for New York State, NYT. This site meets all town required setbacks and all parking requirements. As part of this discussion with the community and planning, we pushed back all the buildings the 67 feet and added pedestrian access on Carlton Avenue, Gull Haven, and Robbins Road. There's a plaza area between the two buildings to, again, create this connectivity between the uses. We also have land bank stalls along the entrance drive of Gull Haven to promote more additional and green space on Gull Haven corridor. Vehicle access will be typically from Gull Haven Drive off of Carlton, and the loading would be behind from Robbins Road. As I move into Site 2, which is the multifamily that's now going to be converted to retail service, there are 3 buildings. The first one is what we call Robbins Hall, Building C. This is the adaptive reuse that will be a potential brew house. Since this is an existing building, we are not able to meet the 150-foot Carlton Avenue buffer. It was important that we reuse this existing building and therefore not able to meet and seeking planning board relief. The building is set back 83 feet. Building D and E will be approximately 27,000 square feet of retail and 9,000 square feet of restaurant in a 1-story building. The 2 buildings will have an outdoor pergola over the outdoor seating area. These buildings will align with Robbins Hall from the property line and have pedestrian access from Carlton Avenue. The intentions of the access is to create a main drive behind it. So as you can see, we're almost using Robbins as a main access, and then people will filter down into the parking lot. Access can be from the traffic signal at Gullhaven or the new traffic signal that was just built off of Carlton. In order to promote a streetscape view from Carlton Avenue, all parking will be in the rear of the building. This means that you will have, again, a streetscape view, landscaping, and sidewalk pedestrian access. Pedestrian access has been from Carlton, as well as towards the town property, which is to the east of us. Based on meetings with the planning department, it was requested to increase the land bank stalls. And so we're looking to add additional land bank stalls that would be on the south side of that site too, essentially where that main access aisle would be and was a required residential buffer. However, we are not allowed to, because it is a residential buffer to the south, we cannot count it as a buffer and therefore would seek relief from that. Site 2, per town standards, requires 502 parking spaces, and we are proposing 514. Again, looking to land bank another additional 22 stalls by the main entrance. Moving south towards Site 3, which is where the medical office is. Building F is a 2-story new medical office building. It'll be approximately 40,000 square feet. Per town standards, require 267 spaces, and we are proposing 277 parking spaces. Due to the sub-district line, the parcel requires a 50-foot buffer to the north and to the east of residential. In discussions with planning, the owner has agreed that there'll be land banking parking to the east that are directly across from the residences, creating a residential buffer. However, we will still seek relief from this board, as again, land bank stalls can now count as a buffer. The building is set back over 118 feet and has an FAR, a floor area ratio, of 0.20. We're seeking relief to increase this FAR to 0.25, which is a 0.05 relief based on the needs of a medical office building. The building is placed 203 feet from the existing residence and will landscaping between the 2 sub-districts. Again, it would be the same owner, so it's in their best interest to landscape appropriately. Due to the site only being 3.74 acres and the need for parking based on town standards, the landscaping relief would be required as well. So per town standards, you would need 20% of the total landscaping, and 50% of that needs to be in the front yard. We are currently providing 11% of total landscaping and 8% in the front yard. Again, it should be noted that we can't count the land bank stalls as landscaping, even though they would be landscaped. Pedestrian access has been added from not only the residential community to increase walkability, but also from Carlton Avenue. Moving to Site 4, this includes the existing Phase 1, and now additional existing adaptive reuse of buildings 10 and 11 from the past college campus would be added. So there's going to be 2 buildings similar to the first project that would be adaptively reused. Phase 1 included 364 units. We are proposing to add 38 units within these existing buildings, called 10 and 11, and 243 units within the 9 3-story, 27-unit buildings. The unit mixes range from studio, one bedroom, and some two bedroom. Per town standards, the town requires 1.7 spaces per unit. The proposed parking is 570 stalls and 30 handicapped. So the town requires 482 stalls and 10 ADA compliant. Because of the shape of the building and because there's access on both sides, we didn't feel it was appropriate to just have one ADA stall per building. So from 10 required ADA stalls, we increased that to 30 to ensure the ADA accessibility on both sides of the building. Additionally, looking at the parking, town requires 1.75. Being that the majority of these are going to be one bedroom and that there's the potential for two people to be in there as well as potentially guests, we did have, again, increase from the 482 to 570 stalls. That being said, based on meetings with the town planning department, we are looking for additional opportunities to land bank stalls, most likely around the drive aisles and things of that nature, to add more landscaping opportunities, as well as adding landscape islands in between the strips of parking. Access to this site will be through the new traffic signal located on Carlton Avenue or on the roundabout that's also installed on Eastview Drive. As part of the traffic impact study comments, there was a request to make a left turn lane on Eastview Drive onto the small entrance to the south. We're going to be looking further into this with the town's consultant to see how this can be either added or mitigated on that access. In many areas has also been added. We'll go into it further later on in the presentation, but dog parks, gazebos, respite areas have all been added as a continuation on this project and increase walkability. You'll notice paths on the landscape as well. A height relief will be required for the new buildings, as the required is 35 feet, and we are requesting 43.58 feet. And the front yard landscaping will also be a required relief. Now, it should be noted that overall on this site 4, we are installing over 9,080,000 square feet. So almost 1 million square feet of landscaping is being added as part of the town requirements of 20% in the front yard. As you could see, the shape of the front yard is smaller in nature, right? So it's kind of skinny down by Carlton Avenue, a little bit longer up by Eastview. We're providing over 100,000 square feet of landscaping. However, due to the size of the site, that is only 4%. So we're not meeting that 10% required. On site 4A, we are having 3 buildings, again, 27 units. There's 179 parking spaces, where required is 162. We'll be looking for additional opportunities to meet, to come down in that parking and land bank any of those stalls as suggested by the planning staff. This will have its own clubhouse as well as pedestrian access that leads them over to site 4 and allows pedestrian access both to all those amenities as well. As part of the town comments, there was a requested left turn lane on Courthouse, which we will be adding. I now turn it over to David Wortman from my office as well to talk about the secret analysis.
Thank you, Courtney. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and staff. My name is David Wortman. I'm the Senior Environmental Manager for VHB Engineering with offices in Hauppauge, New York. VHB was retained by the applicant to review the proposed action from an environmental and land use planning perspective, and to prepare an environmental assessment form and an expanded environmental assessment report. These were prepared and submitted to the town as part of the application, as part of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, or SEQRA, process and review. To perform this work, we began with a review of the land use and secra review history of the property. As this board is surely aware, the town of Islip has been planning for the future use of this property since before the creation of the planned development district at the former Central Islip Psychiatric Center. Relative to the subject property, the master plan for the PDD education campus envisioned that the New York Institute of Technology would have an educational campus with a population of 10,000 students, as many as 5,000 of which would reside at the campus, and as well, all the attendant staff and the activity in and out of the site that would come along with that use. The most recent updates of the master plan, adopted by the town board in 2005, continued to contemplate an active, fully built NYIT campus as a major component of the PDD. The 2005 master plan update underwent its own environmental review pursuant to SECRA, which culminated in the adoption of a finding statement by the Town of Islip Town Board. In the years since that update, NYIT has ceased its Central Islip campus operations, and there's no longer any expectation that NYIT will operate a campus at the site. The property has been identified for redevelopment with other beneficial uses, and the bulk of the subject property, as you've heard, has already been rezoned for multifamily residential use, which brings us to the application before you this evening. A central component of the expanded EA document that was prepared and submitted to the town is a detailed analysis of the current proposed action against that prior finding statement adopted by the town board. In several ways, the proposed action is consistent with those findings. For example, it's maintaining a campus-like setting. The mix of uses that's proposed here are already permitted in the PDD. For those key environmental topics where the proposed action and its mix of uses would have different impacts than those that were already analyzed by the town and accepted, the expanded EA includes a detailed site-specific analysis to allow for a comprehensive understanding of what are the impacts of this specific proposal. In particular, the expanded EA includes site-specific analyses of the following environmental topics. They include impacts on land use, zoning, and relevant comprehensive plans, impacts related to water resources, including groundwater and stormwater, et cetera, and traffic and transportation. The analysis of the prior environmental findings also includes analysis of impacts on community facilities and services, such as impacts on the local schools and others. Additionally, the expanded EA includes a detailed discussion of the purpose, need, and the benefits of the proposed action. So those are documented within the materials submitted to this board. As I mentioned, traffic impacts were among the list of impact topics analyzed. Our traffic engineer, Mr. Aaron Mactay, is here with us tonight and would be glad to answer any questions you may have with regard to those detailed studies. But I'll just mention that with respect to the scope of the traffic impact study that was prepared and submitted, that scope was developed in consultation with your town planning department. It is comprehensive and analyzes multiple principal roadways and key intersections throughout the area, including a total of 13 intersections at the site access points, up and down Carlton Avenue, Eastview Drive, an intersection on Connecticut Avenue, and the Southern State Parkway and Spur Drive North. The TIS also analyzed site access, circulation, and parking. Other planned developments in the area were evaluated, as well as accident history on these roadways. And proposed transit and pedestrian accommodations were also evaluated. Mitigation measures were identified, as you'll hear more about. And of course, as I said, our traffic engineer is here tonight and would be glad to answer any questions you have about those things. The results of the TIS were reviewed and found to be acceptable by the town and its consultants, LK McLean Associates. And overall, based on the detailed analysis of the proposed action within the EAF, the expanded EA report, and the supporting studies that have been submitted, we respectfully offer that the proposed action is consistent with the prior finding statement adopted by the town board to the extent practicable, And where the proposed action would have different impacts than those previously accepted, they've been minimized and would not result in any significant adverse impacts that were not previously addressed through the design of the proposed action. With all that said, these materials remain available to you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have with regard to environmental impacts. Thank you. Mr. Kevin?
Thank you, David. Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Russell Moore, Vice President, Steel Equities. I thank you all for hearing our application this evening. This application for a change of zone before you tonight represents the true vision of a smart growth community which will continue the redevelopment of the property that was formerly occupied by the New York State Psychiatric Center as well as the New York Institute of Technology. Prior to Steel Equities taking ownership, this property had been abandoned and offered tax rolls since inception, and over the years had created a blight in Central Islip. The Belmont at Eastview conceptual plans before you tonight demonstrate the types of communities that are being developed throughout the Southeast and attracting people of all ages. And that is our goal for this plan. Steel Equities and the Marcus Organization, together with the town of Islip and members of the community, have diligently worked hard and crafted a master plan with this in mind for this 87-acre parcel. The plan is consistent with the town's vision for the planned development district, and the proposed development will support the local economy by providing both direct and indirect jobs, as well as stimulate economic growth in the area. The plan will provide for a mixed-use development that will offer a multitude of housing opportunities. This, together with the proposed retail, commercial, and medical uses, will create a sustainable, pedestrian-friendly community to live, work, and play in an environment that will continue to redevelop the Carlton Avenue corridor, finally removing the blight of the former state-owned property and putting this property back on the tax rolls, beyond to where it is today. The increased demand on Long Island for a larger supply of multifamily rental housing, additional home ownership for persons 55 or older, together with the need for the mixed-use retail and medical services, this will service both the local Central Islip area and the surrounding communities and make this project, again, a pinnacle for smart growth and a much-needed development for the area. The residential community amenities that'll be placed in this park-like setting will feature an 18,000 square foot clubhouse, a pool deck, fire pits, community gardens, a tranquil preserved fish pond from the old campus, basketball, tennis, and pickleball courts, miles of walking trails, bike paths, open green spaces, picnic barbecue areas, dog parks throughout, many of which are being used by our current residents today. And the clubhouse, which is currently under construction, is scheduled for completion by June of 2024. The plan before you this evening will result in additional walking trails, bike paths, dog parks, recreational areas throughout the site, as well as a clubhouse for the proposed condominium complex of approximately 2,500 square feet. The Belmont Apartments will incorporate green building technologies featuring Energy Star appliances, utility certified light fixtures, and an advanced technology package to remotely monitor HVAC lighting systems for the residents, and will have a focus on construction and site sustainability, minimizing the carbon footprint. A little bit about phase one. Phase one at the Belmont features 364 apartments, inclusive of 10% affordable housing. We opened our doors in June of 2023, and occupancy began in August with an estimated completion date of all the newly renovated buildings by approximately June of 2024. To date, we have leased over 100 apartments, and it's important to note that the age demographics to date of our residents on site ranges from 25 to 45. This includes police officers, fire department, emergency service workers, nurses, and alike, many of our first responders, which is a great thing to hear, and keeping our workforce here on Long Island. This data loudly demonstrates the need to provide a range of housing types for the young generation to assist in keeping our workforce here on Long Island. In addition, to let you all know, a lottery for the Workforce Affordable Housing Apartments was conducted yesterday by the Long Island Housing Partnership, Town of Islip, and the developer. There were 866 applications for these apartments, and there are more affordable housing units that will be offered in the Phase 2 portion of the development. This again demonstrates there is a desperate need for this type of housing in Central Islip and throughout Long Island. We truly appreciate the hard work and dedication of the local civic associations, the Islip Planning Department, and the Engineering Department, who have been instrumental in moving this project forward and helping us develop this plan. And we thank you for this opportunity tonight. On behalf of Steel Equities and the Marcus Organization, we want to let you know that we are vested in this community and are looking forward to bringing this master plan development to fruition. Thank you.
Now, before we open this up to questions and comment, I would just like to note for the board that we previously provided letters of support from the Long Island Housing Partnership and Central Islip Civic Council. With that, we ask that you look favorably on this application.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to Mr. Frugieri to call up those who are here to speak on this application.
Deborah Kavanaugh.
Good evening, Debbie Kavanaugh, 21 Walnut Street, Central Islip, New York. I am definitely in favor of Phase 2 of the project. It brings back the historical site, especially in Robbins Hall, to what it once was, which was an entertainment center. And I do like what they want to do with the old baseball field, so on and so forth. I am not opposed to the senior housing at all. However, I just learned a little while ago, less than 5 minutes ago, that there is some concerns with the ducts, and I'm hoping that they all work it out, because I don't want to lose the ducts in Central Islip either. So other than that, I am basically in favor of the project. Thank you.
Lisa Rizzo.
Almost, I want to say thank you for this opportunity, for allowing me to stand here today. And forgive me for not speaking so eloquently as my predecessors. I don't know the lingo, but I am a town resident, born and raised in East Islip. I love my town, I love my community. And I can only speak from my heart and hope what I say will benefit the community. I am not in favor of this huge project. I reside at 921 Courthouse Commons. Just destroying the natural habitat and the well-being of the community, or 600 apartments, retail spaces. I only bought into that community and that development because it was so private and quiet. The serenity, peacefulness of the neighborhood, the traffic congestion, pollution, noise, and overall chaos that's going to be caused. Traffic. I'm a teacher. I go to Queens every day. I take the train out of CI. There's already traffic. That roundabout that they're making with the apartments within the college that was there. Not to mention all these other apartments that are going to take place. I could only imagine. I'm already on a 5:30 train, trying to get up. 20 minutes early. That's a 3-minute commute to try to get to my train. It's total disarray, overcrowded. And this new community that's going to be built, are the children in this community, which I'm sure there will be, are in our schools and CI already at capacity? Is it all about the kids? Is this really the town's vision, or is it yours? Thank you very much.
Mary King.
Hi, I'm Mary King. One thing that we don't know, some years ago, there's a lot that everyone has said and will say from my development, I can ditto it, is the concern of human beings in our life. I live in Courthouse Commons, and my bedroom faces Eastview. Do you know how many times we walk in the morning, and even the construction workers have things, they're knocked down by the traffic and people going very fast around that corner. We have people that will be coming from Carlton. Nothing's going to stop them from coming down Courthouse Drive, coming through our property in order to get up to Southern State. Talking about a lot more traffic. You're talking about human beings. I mean, we can talk about all of this stuff that's planning. I don't like it either. The other woman was, the last woman, I think she's a neighbor, was saying, you know, we liked it quiet, you know. Used to be nice on Suffolk County. You live on Long Island. Now it's going to be like Manhattan. But that's secondary. That's secondary because I'm in my room and I hear bang. I went out one day because some poor woman went into a tree across the street and was in an accident. Smoke's coming out. With all of this traffic, I mean, I don't know how you're going to put a, you know, there's a building going up, apartment buildings right across the street from me now, new apartment buildings next to Turo. Where are they going to park? We told them years ago, that's a dangerous place to put any kind of an entrance for people going in there. It's a lot of people, a lot of kids from Turo, and they're not, you know, it's just, it's sad because I don't think anyone thought about human beings and about traffic and about safety because I can't even open my windows, the amount of pollution that's there. But anyway, it's sad. It's sad what's happening, and I'm very upset. I should have moved a long time ago. But it's nice, but it's not Manhattan. This is Long Island, and we're losing a lot of Long Island.
Joseph Stallone.
Good evening. I'm Joseph Sloan. I reside at 7 Jeremy Court in Center H, Brookhaven. The reason I'm here because I am coming here to present on behalf of the Long Island Builders Institute, the largest residential home building trade association in New York State. And in acknowledgement of the prevailing housing crisis on Long Island, we wish to express our support for the Belmont and Eastview development project, which includes a total of 364 rental apartments, alongside the inclusion of amenities like a clubhouse, playing fields, community gardens, exercise trails, dog parks, an expansive pool deck and lounge, as well as much more. I fully believe this project will not only contribute to the economic growth and beautification of Central Islip, but will also address the pressing need for additional housing in our area. The development plan aims to transform the site into a vibrant and welcoming space for communities of families and seniors alike. With board's approval of the project, the forthcoming construction will breathe new life into the area by allowing for the development of a mixed-use space of housing, retail shops, marketplaces, and cafes, as well as a medical facility. The development project will not only create hundreds of direct and indirect jobs for the area, but will also have a positive impact on the local economy. Upon its completion, the site will yield 726 residential homes and incorporate green building technologies to reduce its carbon footprint and promote sustainable building practices. This project is a gateway project to service the population of Central Islip, meaning it will serve as a catalyst to spur smart growth and much-needed development for the area, as well as improving a large parcel that has laid dormant for approximately a decade. It has received tremendous support from local civic organizations, adjoining condominium boards, and local officials. Considering the significant advantages this development project offers, I wholeheartedly support its approval and implementation on behalf of the Long Island Builders Institute. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and I trust that you'll make a decision that best upholds the interests of the residents of the town of Islip. Thank you.
Ellen Chicharo.
Hello. As an owner of a condo in Courthouse Commons, I've been living there for almost 7 years. And the town of Islip Traffic Safety knows my name because there are so many light poles that have been knocked down by car accidents. We walk every day 4 miles. We walk all the way up Carlton, cross over by Gullhaven, and walk all the way down. It's only a matter of time before someone's going to get killed by a car. I asked them to do traffic studies. Well, that's great. It's great to do traffic studies, but when you have an additional 645 apartments times possibly two cars per apartment, you're talking about 1,200 additional cars on the road. I have access in different directions to get out of my community, but the people that live in, I think it's Islip Landing, there's only one way in and out of that development, and that's Eastview Drive. We have had, Lowell had a pole down. I mean, they build up a speed as they're coming down south to the Southern State Parkway and north to Lowell. For me, I think it's beautiful what they're making. It's lovely. It's a lot better looking than the abandoned campus, but it's a safety issue. And it's only a matter of time. We've already had accidents. They're going to be building right up to Courthouse Drive. We had a very serious accident there not that long ago. There are always accidents on Eastview Drive. Carlton Avenue, I don't see as often, but Eastview Drive is a one-way in each direction road. This is going to be a cluster bleep of traffic. And I mean, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about my own safety because believe me, if I get killed by a car coming down that street when I'm walking every day, I'm going to be, my husband already knows what to do. Thank you.
Frank Bolton. Okay. Michael Pfaff, you're next.
Good evening. I'm Michael Pfaff, President and General Manager of the Long Island Ducks. I want to make it clear that we are not here to object to anything, but would like to be on record as having concerns about items that have not been addressed or resolved yet. I'll read the following statement on behalf of the Long Island Ducks. The Ducks have welcomed 9 million people to Central Islip over the past 23 years, generating millions of dollars in revenue for multiple municipalities, while serving as a quality of life benefit and source of pride for our entire region. The Ducks have also been the linchpin of the incredible renaissance the surrounding Central Islip area has undergone. Prior to the arrival of T-Mobile, Home Depot, Target, Pulte Homes, Toro Law, the Courtyard by Marriott, and countless others, it was the Ducks who first proved Central Islip could fulfill its promise of being a home run community. In 23 years, we have had 700 sold-out crowds. Of our top 100 sellouts, all 100 have featured fireworks as the promotion. Fireworks shows have become synonymous with the Ducks brand of affordable family fun. In turn, firework nights have become a crucial component to affording the Ducks the ability to continue providing Long Islanders an affordable night of entertainment. We are concerned that this proposal, which would locate thousands of new residents directly behind the right field fence of the stadium, would jeopardize these shows and create an issue for all involved. We're here tonight to simply voice our concern, be constructive in the desire to have an amicable agreement with these new property owners, and be upfront about the possible conflict that could exist and the effect it could have to the Long Island Ducks as an ongoing business. To be clear, though, this is not just about fireworks. It is about getting ahead of the issues that will undoubtedly surface when you have 640 apartments and 80 senior citizen condos whose next door neighbor is a county facility that closes the street 70 times a year, has 180-foot light towers on 70 times a year, music, public address, batting practice, home runs hit over the wall and onto the proposed development area 70 times a year, while welcoming hundreds of thousands of people to their block. To be sure, the Ducks are a conspicuous neighbor. We are not opposing the project. In fact, we're good with 90% of it. We want to make sure we work smarter and not harder now and in the future by being involved in the planning process so we may provide our input and knowledge gleaned from 23 years of operation on the property. Waiting to do so until shovel hits dirt will be too late. Thank you.
Rollins Francois.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rollins Francois. I'm a resident of Central Islip, New York, 129 Woodland Avenue. My opinion about this proposed plan is excessive and unnecessary for extra apartments. Proposed site has a proposed 281 apartments for a total of 645 apartments and 80 senior condos. Now, we already have multiple apartment constructions that are going on. We just talked about the renovation at Belmont, Eastview Drive, 14 new buildings, 87 acres. There's another apartment construction happening right across the street at the courthouse. There's another apartment / condo construction happening right next to Fox State Community that's going to have 11 buildings. We have 3 different apartment / condo constructions happening at the same time on the same block. And the issue is not a housing crisis. The issue is a rent crisis here. I'm a 26-year-old. I can't even afford with 2 jobs to afford a 1-bedroom apartment here in Central Islip, let alone Long Island. The average rent in Long Island is $2,130 for a studio, and the average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in Central Islip is $2,700, consistent with the price that I saw at the Belmont Eastview Drive when I was looking at doing my research. We have 64% of Long Island renters can't afford a typical 2-bedroom apartment like myself. So the issue is rent crisis, and we're not doing anything to address that, but we're building more and more and more apartment complexes, costing people an arm and a leg where they can't even afford it here. What are we doing about affordable housing? I heard 10% of affordable housing for this. What about 40%, 50%? People need shelters. There's no reason why people living in this community have to pay more for a 1-2 bedroom than people own a house. My parents have been living for 20 years. Their mortgage is less than the apartments at the Belmont Eastview Drive. And I think that's a problem and should be addressed. Also addressed the possible traffic here as well too. There was a traffic circle that was added. I believe it, town spokesman Carol Smith had that in plan. We talked about this. I drive to Carlton every single day. By rush hour, it is packed because there's trains right down the block that cut off the traffic with a red light that only happens for 3 seconds. You have further down the block on Wheeler World, a school I graduated from, Central Islip, buses coming in and out, dropping people off there and there. Not to mention, too, a representative from the Ducks, there's going to be buildings right behind the Ducks game. There's going to have noise, possible hazardness for fireworks going on. It's not safe. And how is that going to implement a traffic light when there's already a roundabout? You know what I mean? Same thing too on Eastview Drive. Getting in and out of the southern state has become hectic. And there's also another construction happening on the right side of a storage unit that was built not too long ago. So what is with all these constructions? What are we doing to give back to the next generation of kids? Now, I'm not opposed of a development on the site, but we need to do something for the next generation. Why not maybe a park, a pond, a rec center, updating something that we can do instead of lining up the pockets of real estate agents that people cannot barely afford housing here. I'm one of them. I've been living in Central for 20 years. 20 years. That's all I had to say.
Andrea Gerard.
Good evening. I'm a resident of Islip Landing. I can't say it better than this gentleman already said, but I do want to note it, the impact that traffic will have on Islip Landing residents. Like was stated previously, we only have one way in and out. We have this one community, we have a 55 and older community on one side of Eastview and another mixed community on the other side. We only have one entrance, in and out off of Eastview. We have no other choice. In the evenings, at peak hours, it's already so hard to exit out carefully onto Eastview. So please take in consideration, I'm not in favor of this community. We would love to have, we need a market. We need certain things on our side of Central Islip. We need those things. However, the traffic on Eastview already it's already bad. So how is 600 more apartments going to ease that? The traffic circle as it is, I don't think it's going to work. As it is, already the apartments haven't even been built yet, and there's problems with the traffic circle. So 600 more vehicles plus, that's 600 more apartments times 2 vehicles. So please take in consideration the traffic that's going to be impounded on Eastview as of now with this project going forward. Please, thank you very much.
Logan Soto.
Hello, my name is Logan Sudo. I'm a resident of Bayport, New York. I'm just here to show my support for the project today. That is all.
Guys, you've been very respectful so far, and everybody's entitled to an opinion just like you. So please don't, be disrespectful.
Nancy Manfredonia. Nancy? Oh, there she is.
My name is Nancy Manfredonia. I live at 23 Deer Path Road in Central Islip. I am here on my own behalf, but also to speak for the Central Islip Civic Council. We are in favor of this project. I have to tell you, some of you may know that I've been around a long time. I can remember in 1983 talking about bringing New York Tech in to the community. We have always, as residents and on the Central Islip Civic Council, been concerned about what would happen to these buildings. You can imagine at certain parts in New York State, there are terrible problems. You might have read about the Kings Park fire. I really feel that the Kings Park and the town of Smithtown missed an opportunity, to do something with the Kings Park Psychiatric Hospital. Anyway, I was there for the 1987 master plan and the 2005 master plan. This project exceeds all our expectations. Never in a million years did we think that we would have a company come in and take over the remaining 80 some odd acres and come up with such a beautiful plan. We have always wanted the buildings to be recycled and reused, and this is what they are doing. I was thrilled with the Sunburst buildings being saved, but to save all of the remaining buildings is just miraculous. So in general, we're going to get more money on the tax rolls. We're going to help our school district. We're going to produce jobs. We're going to have people who will be able to come and actually shop in our downtown. There'll be certain shops nearby across the street. It's amazing. I'm surprised there's no press on what's happened in Central Islip because it's really miraculous. We have the downtown DRI, which is improving the downtown. I understand this young man's frustration. It's 10% affordable, but there's also, people don't realize, there's going to be an apartment complex on Carlton Avenue just south of the railroad tracks, which is 100% affordable, and it's going to be beautiful too. But the amenities in this particular Belmont at Eastview are amazing. I think the traffic concern is real, and I think the fact that there's going to be more traffic control on Eastview is a plus. That has been a speedway, and it's really dangerous. So, whatever has to be done in terms of traffic calming is great, but in general, we're lucky, and this is a wonderful project. Thank you.
Martha Sharsi. Shari?
Good evening. Martha Shari, 446 Saxton Court, Central Islip. It is a lovely plan. I can't find anything wrong with the plan. It's beautiful. But do you know that Eastview Drive is 1 6/10 miles long? There are 9 entrances on the west side entering onto Eastview Drive. That's developments and roadways. And there are 8 on the east side. That's 17 driveways going into a 1.5 mile area. So you have people coming in, they're trying to make a right-hand turn into where Islip Land, where Foxgate is. Those people can't even get out of their development. The people that live in Park Row and the new Fairfield, they come down Spur Drive, they can't get out of their street. Islip Landing, they can't get out of their street. We're lucky we have 2 entrances, one on Courthouse Drive and one on Eastview. The traffic is unbearable. You have to do something about it. Thank you.
Danielle Hislop.
Hi, I live in Courthouse Commons. My building is directly on the corner of Eastview and Courthouse Drive. And I'm very concerned about this. I think that the Belmont that was going up now looks beautiful, is fantastic, but I don't see the need for all this additional buildings and apartments. I don't understand why, if they were talking about affordable housing, it wasn't brought in at the beginning with the apartments that are already there. And as this gentleman so eloquently said, it's not affordable. 10% really is nothing. And anybody who's looking at the Belmont is paying $2,800 for a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, and $3,500 for a 2-bed, 2-bath. That's not affordable. I live right there and I couldn't afford it either. If I had a roommate even, I couldn't afford that. Also, the traffic. As I said, I'm on the corner of Eastview and Courthouse Drive. That traffic circle has done nothing. The speeding is horrendous. I hear it all the time, like one of my neighbors. My balcony faces Eastview, and there is constant speeding, constant backfiring, constant motorcycles. It's dangerous. It is extremely dangerous, and putting all of those people there will make it even worse. It's great to say that you're going to have all these amenities and gardens and everything, but if people can't afford to live there, and if the rest of the community cannot access it, then I don't see what the point of having it is. Also, the shops and restaurants that are going to be there, are they going to be owned by local residents, or are they going to be large corporate stores and restaurants, chain restaurants? Because if you're putting in locally owned places, then I can make a case for it. But if you're just going to add to more, Targets and Fridays and Applebee's, then it's really not benefiting the community at all. Thank you.
Edith Thomas.
Hello, my name is Edith Thomas. I live at 55 East Cherry Street in Central Islip. If you don't know the Central Islip area, you would realize all the apartments and all the streets you're talking about right now, you're forgetting that once you get to the end of Eastview, you come out to Lowell Avenue. So you have Carlton Avenue and you have Lowell Avenue as the main streets going from Southern State to Suffolk Avenue. Both of those streets are one lane. When I go to work, I leave early in the morning. When I come home, it's after 6 o'clock. It's like 7 o'clock. I have never realized how bad the traffic is when the courts come out, when everybody is leaving around 4 o'clock, until I left my house last Friday at 4 o'clock. I thought there was a car accident. I thought something happened. Coming from over by Fridays, there was so much traffic that the intersection was completely blocked. And I said to myself, I'm so glad I'm not going down Carlton Avenue. I'm cutting through Goldhaven. I was sitting at the light, at the stop sign, really, on going through Goldhaven. I'm like, this has never happened. What is going on? Then I realized this is rush hour traffic at this time of day. I'm usually not home. I'm a person, and it sounds from what everyone is saying, you forgot there's another part of Central Islip when you get through Eastview. All of these things you're doing, you're not doing anything for the people who live off of Lowell. Someone actually mentioned Connecticut. You forgot. Lowell Avenue is the part that's in Central Islip. Connecticut is when you go to Islip Terrace. You're forgetting about the people who live there. You're making changes, and truly, I would say thank you, because my mother was a resident at the mental health hospital when it was in Central Islip, and I always loved driving through there and knowing they took care of her in that building. I'm glad to see that y'all preserve that building. Thank you. However, You got to think about the people. One time I made a turn off of my street, making a right, going towards the railroad. I'm like, oh my God, I can't see. All the trees, everything is being taken down. Think about how you're really affecting the community that lives there. I bought my house 25 years ago. I've been paying taxes for 25 years. My family has lived in the Islip area for 30 years. We deserve some kind of respect. You talk about affordable housing. I work for a homeless shelter. When the lottery came up for the Belmont, we applied for some of the individuals to be in that lottery. Guess what? They're probably not going to be able to afford to be there. You really need to take into realization a lot of people in your homeless shelter are actually people who are on Social Security. You get $700 to $1,400 a month. Who can live off of that? You're talking about a $2,000 studio? Really? DSS will pay $300 for a single person to help them live. If they make over $12,000, you don't get that $300 a month. Really, if you're talking about affordable housing, who are you building affordable housing for? You're not building it for the people who actually need it. And that's my concern.
Gina Farisi.
Hi, I am Gina Farisi. I reside at 551 Pease Lane. As a resident of the town of Islip for over 10 years and a prior resident of Courthouse Commons for quite some time, I support this project and feel that it is greatly needed for our community. The reality of traffic as an argument is a moot point, because if it was in fact still occupied as a school, the traffic would still remain, if not be even more of an issue. If not this, something will still go on this unoccupied land. So why not something that would benefit our community, increase the resale value of our properties, and provide accessibility of necessities like medical buildings, shopping, entertainment, etc. From the creation of jobs to build this project, as well as post-construction job opportunities, as well as having the luxury living available in our town, something unlike anything else in the area, with all the amenities that other communities in the surrounding areas do not offer. Also to keep families like myself, as well as seniors like my parents who had to move further east from their children and their grandchildren in order to find accommodations like this, not to mention to revitalize a community that would be in reality a positive one for the community. I feel it's quite necessary for our community, not to mention the additional tax revenue this will bring about. Thank you.
Caesar Soba.
Good evening, board members. Caesar Soba, 153 Maya Circle. My exit, my development is on Eastview. I walk Eastview every day to Carlton. I applaud Mr. Moore on some of the things he's done, but his engineering study has been a complete failure as far as the traffic circle. As my neighbor stated, Eastview is 1.4 miles long. By the time these people that are transversing through our community reach the bottom of, by the Southern State, they exceeding 70, 80, 90 miles an hour. There has been about 6 vehicles that have gone through the traffic circle. One took down Mr. Moore's light pole. The next thing is they put a Belmont sign in the traffic circle. So if somebody is drunk or inebriated in the middle of the night, they will proceed through the traffic circle and hit his sign. Not a good thing. I do applaud the fact that he's saving Robbins Hall, the restaurants. My main concern is when they say market, do they mean supermarket? Are we talking a Trader Joe's or a Lidl or something like that? I mean, that sounds good for the community. I'm glad my fellow residents mentioned tax-based revenue. The seniors in this area were overtaxed. If some of this money could be kicked back or given back to us to help our tax base, it would be great. Also, if Mr. Moore would consider letting the residents of Park Row, Islip Landing, transverse his properties, his walking trails and things like that, that might help alleviate some of this, animosity towards his project. If we could have access, not to his facilities, obviously, but the walking trails and stuff like that. Because right now by Duck Stadium, it's just vacant land for us to enjoy, And then across from his traffic circle are 3 ball fields and a soccer field. If people are going down Eastview at 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, that's not a good thing. Okay, I'm not for his project. I'm not against it. I just wanted to point these things out to the board. Thank you.
Those are all the cards that we have. Anybody come in late, wish to be heard on the application who did not fill out a card? Sorry, anyone who did not speak, wish to be heard on the application? Not seeing anyone, I'm turning to Mr. Colgan for a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is Phase 2 of the Belmont and Central Islip on the former MIT Central Islip Psychiatric Center grounds. Phase 1 was the subject of a change of zone back in 2020 for the adaptive reuse of many of the existing buildings for 364 apartments. Recently, the existing chapel, located on the southwest portion of the site, was approved by the board as an adaptive reuse for the medical office. Phase 2 proposes a retail market, adaptive reuse of the Robbins Hall, retail services, a 2-story medical office building, additional apartments, and senior condominiums. The master plan update back in 2005 acknowledged the declining enrollment of MIT and the increased need for diversified housing. MIT is effectively leaving the area and has been actively selling property it owns, mostly for multifamily developments. These include the Sunburst buildings and the cottages on the west side of Carlton Avenue. The proposed multifamily development and retail office use is in direct response to these trends. Additionally, the proposal supports the goals of the master plan, including supporting the town's revitalization efforts, increasing the town's tax base, complementing the mix of retail, commercial, and recreation uses that have been developed in the PDD, as well as the reuse of existing structures. The additional retail space is under the cap of 350,000 maximum square footage in accordance with the master plan update and appears warranted based on the increase in the number of residential units that have been constructed and are pending. The site plan shows amenities for the new residential units. The buildings along Carlton Avenue comply with the required setbacks and maintain the campus appearance called for in the master plan. The conceptual site plan also shows that all sites exceed minimum parking requirements and all but Site 3, the medical office, exceed landscaping requirements. On Site 1, the staff recommends that the applicant land bank additional stalls between the medical office and the supermarket in order to accommodate a plaza and activate that public space. On Site 2, the town's traffic consultant recommended land banking any parking stalls in excess of 410. Land banked islands with trees could be accommodated to reduce the heat island effect in this area, as well as improving the aesthetics and customer experience on site. Site 3 only shows 11% overall landscaping and does not have the minimum required 50-foot buffer along the eastern property line. The mostly impermeable surface will pose a challenge to store stormwater on site. The staff recommends the applicant provide for a 3-story building to accommodate additional green space and/or land bank parking stalls in excess of 161 to address these proposed relaxations. Site 4 is overparked considerably. An additional land banking of stalls is warranted. Site 4A is also overparked, but less so. Emergency access between the 2 parcels may be warranted and should be explored further by the applicant. With regards to the traffic study, the town's traffic consultant did review the applicant submission, and the consultant is in general agreement with the study conclusion that the traffic generated by the proposed project can be accommodated on the highway network, including the roadway improvements identified and being implemented as mitigation measures of Phase 1 traffic impacts. He further recommended the land banking discussed, as well as the dedicated left turn lanes into the development from Eastview Drive and Courthouse Drive. He also indicated that Robbins Road is shown as unimproved north of Goldhaven Drive, and that bike paths and lanes should be considered as connectors throughout the development. The building architectural elevations are generally compatible with the master plan and the incorporation of brick, which is common with the surrounding area. The staff recommends that the retail buildings include storefronts and entrances that address Carlton Avenue and do not look like the backs of buildings to preserve the aesthetic appeal of this stretch of the roadway. Additional traditional features common to the original hospital building should also be considered for all new construction. We've heard a lot of comments here tonight that need to be addressed thoroughly by the staff and the applicant, so the staff would recommend that the board reserve decision tonight before bringing this back for some sort of recommendation.
Questions from the board? Mr. Bruno?
Okay. Being an architect by training, I'm going to just focus on that for a moment. Mr. Kennedy, when you did your introduction, I believe I have an exact quote here, but you'd correct it. The focal point of this development was the adaptive reuse of the 14 existing buildings.
That's correct.
This particular development now totally disregards that. While I understand what staff is saying about the incorporation of some brick, that may be appropriate for other sites, but I don't think it's appropriate for this site. I think this site, your client does not appear to at all be embracing what happened in the first part of this project. I think that when you start to look at this, every opportunity to do a new building does not at all express what is on this site. It doesn't take the shape. It doesn't take the look. It just says, oh, good, let's go do what we've done in other places. We'll stick some brick here and call it a day, okay? I find particularly ironic the medical building, when in fact Mr. Moore, said that this was the centralized psychiatric facility. The centralized psychiatric facility. I believe that was a medical facility. And yet your medical building looks nothing like the buildings that are on the rest of the site. So my feeling is that what you're doing now, and there are many other comments, but from my perspective, what you're proposing now is it makes me feel as if you got forced to reuse the existing buildings. You are not at all embracing the look, the feel, the architecture of them, and that you're totally disregarding that. And now with the opportunity, just building as if this was a vacant site, irregardless of those. So that's my comment in total. And you can take it from there.
I appreciate your comments, and as you know, we will be working with Ms. Wozniak and the rest of the planning department to ensure that whatever is built there meets all architectural standards from the town's perspective.
Mr. Moriarty?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. Walk me through again the ownership rental structure. How many units are we talking about? Phase 1, phase 2? My understanding is we're looking at 80 condos, right?
80.
That's all the ownership piece?
Correct.
Okay.
The initial.
Oh, go on, sorry.
The initial phase was 364 apartment units.
Okay, all rentals?
Correct.
Okay.
This phase is proposing 281 additional rentals with 81 condominium units for sale.
Have you looked at, one concern I have is just the high level of rentals going into that area generally. We've got, our attendees tonight pointed out, there are quite a number of rental projects going up in that area. I'm concerned about not necessarily absorption, but long-term, what is this going to look like? I prefer to see a higher percentage, frankly, of ownership. I don't know if you've looked at that. I think that stabilizes the community. People have a stake in remaining there. They've built equity in their units. Has the developer looked at that, and how did you come up with that kind of breakout?
I believe they did explore it, and there has been a tremendous demand for these rental units thus far. There are over 100 people currently at the site, and there are no more studio and one bedrooms, left at that site. That has created the demand for these rental units. And
Yeah, I understand the current demand. I'm concerned about the future demand and other projects like this going online over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and suddenly that absorption slows down, and then we've got a giant cluster of rentals there without a lot of owners, and historically you've seen problems like that develop in other communities. So that's the concern that I have.
Sure. Russ,
And if I may speak to that, I mean, it really is a function of offering one-bedroom units. I think 80% of the proposed project for the 281 units are featured as one-bedroom units because the demand is so great. and I could tell you by what I've looked at in the adjoining properties that are being developed now, the property to the south, which is 50 plus or minus units, and the 100 units that the Crest group just acquired, those are all 2-bedroom plus lofts, significantly larger in square footage. And I think we're filling a void in the market here that you don't see. You don't see down in Bayshore. You're seeing these smaller units for the studios and the ones, and the demand, I tell you, we have a waiting list now where we've gotten through our first 136 units that have been made available. We have 100 people living there. The demand is tremendous. And I think really the desire is to keep these people on Long Island. And they're, you know, our studios started at $1,960. Our 1-bedroom started at $2,100 and change, and our 2-bedroom started at $2,500. As the units get larger, of course, those rates will go up, but this allows us to provide for a multitude of housing types for all different people, and that is our goal here. I think the 2-bedroom condominium concept works very well. I do have experience in this area and working in Islip Landing, and as the units got larger, the market gets smaller because of the issue, particularly on condominiums with taxation in Central Islip, in Islip as a whole. It poses a problem for home ownership because a unit that may sell for $450,000 in Central Islip, you'll be paying $10,000 a year in taxes. That same unit in Huntington is paying $6,000 a year. So those are some of the struggles that you're up against when you're looking at doing for sale versus rental communities. And you combine that with the increased costs in construction and the interest rates this time, those are the challenges in front of us. You know, not to mention, you know, the hurdles that we've come through in the last 12 months, 14 months with the adaptive reuse of these buildings. The cost of construction that we penciled out, and not that has an impact on the proposal today, but the unforeseen costs of the underground tunnels, of the asbestos abatement, all of these things that increased our overall construction costs, plus the cost of fuel, the cost of PVC, the cost of wire, everything that is culminated to this project, and every developer's facing it. But going back to your question, I think the demand for 1-bedrooms, studios is truly in need here, which really is why we put that proposal here today and kept that balance of the condominiums versus the rental units.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question, just on affordability. I guess you're proposing a 10% of the units.
Correct, in both the senior development as well as the
And is that
rental.
that's, Sean, that's a town mandate, correct? Right, so that's what's required by the town. Have you looked at BASA? You've heard of affordability being an issue, particularly in this community. I'd suggest you take a closer look at that to see if you can bump that up. I understand the economics. It's a net zero, so if this comes from one column, it goes into the other. So, but I think just from a public relations perspective, it might be something you want to take a look at. Just a comment.
Certainly, thank you.
Ms. Cruz?
Hi. I have just a few things I just kind of want to point out. First of all, I also agree with the look of it, of the buildings. It seems to me like it wasn't even softened. It needs to be softened because it just looks like a bunch of buildings. Nothing added, nothing included. I wanted it to look a little bit different than across from Target, where you just see a bunch of buildings and, you know, yes, I like walking around there. But it just feels like if it's going to be something new and to revitalize, I'd like to see the buildings given a softer look, something more, a lot nicer to go with the new buildings that are coming around it. So I'd like to see the buildings just a little bit softened. So I do have to agree with that. I also wanted to say, as far as somebody mentioned one of the neighbors' walking trails, will the neighbors be allowed to walk through these properties? I understand that you have sort of, you know, areas where maybe they won't be allowed, but I would like to see that these walking trails are available to the community as well, not just to these who are renting here. And finally, the other thing that I also wanted to make sure, somebody mentioned corporate businesses owning some of the, or coming into these businesses. I'd like to also see local businesses, not just corporates, not, another Fridays as well. Because I also, again, I'm part of this community. I love to walk around. I go to the Ducks games. Me and my family ride bikes. So I would like to see local businesses as well. And one more comment would be the railroad. I don't know if traffic study has had a chance to take into consideration the traffic that holds up once the train is there. The light itself doesn't give you a lot of time to make lefts when you're down there and causes a lot of backup on Carlton Avenue. So that's something that I'd like to see looked at because you're adding a lot of new apartments. And lastly is also the affordable housing. I always get a chuckle when everybody's like, oh, well, we're putting affordable housing. Well, you're mandated. How about giving a little extra to show us that you really do believe in this community? So I'd like to see that taken into consideration, not just the minimum, but a little bit more. Thank you.
I don't know if you want to address any of Ms. Cruz's points
Sure.
before I speak. Go ahead.
It's up to you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first and foremost, on the architecture, this was a first draft. We were working, this was a change of zone hearing. We were working on focusing on the site plan, on the balancing of the site, and trying to present to this board a site that worked. Mr. Bruno, we have worked together for many years, and I do assure you that we will work diligently with the planning staff and the commissioner to get to something that makes sense for the staff and the board. With regards to local businesses, we've already engaged with local businesses through the community events that we've had, people who've had interest. Based on my experience in building retail facilities, many times it's build it, they will come. So we really need to get our shovel in the ground and show the people, the vendors, what we're building to get those community in. We would certainly offer Central Islip as a whole, businesses to come in here and have an opportunity to work together to bring businesses into this community to enhance the local area. With regards to affordability, right now, our affordable levels are right up against the marketplace. So while affordable unit is leasing for $2,003 a month, which is the at or below 80% of the area median income, our market rate units are $2,075 a month. Our one bedrooms are $2,500 a month, and the one bedroom affordables are $2,300. The two bedrooms, there is a little bit of a larger gap, but that is where we are in the marketplace. I think we've priced this at a level which is truly making the market affordable. You'll find that our promotions, when you come into our leasing office, we're including all of the services in our base rent. We're including Wi-Fi. We're including valet trash. We're including snow removal, all of the amenities that you get. All of those, a lot of places you walk into and they say your rent is $2,300 a month. And guess what? By the time you walk out of there with amenity fees, trash, etc., you're paying $2,500 a month. That's not something we're promoting here. And I think it's given us a market edge on leasing 100 apartments in 3.5 months. And that shows you the demand that's out there for these types of one bedroom and studio units. And I get to refresh me on your last one. I'm sorry? The railroad. The railroad, certainly it's right down the block in Lowell Avenue. It's certainly, I think it was really the walkability. And the walkability in this community, we will be refurbishing all the perimeter walkways around the community. But one of the things that's very important to the residents as they're coming in, and we listen to the people and we adapt to those programs, is safety and security. The fact that we have a 24-hour security guard on site is very, very positive when people are considering relocating to our development. So we take pride in that. We want to promote the safety and security of our residents while still providing a walkable environment around the community. The other thing I'd like to add, which we've been talking to the town supervisor as well as the planning department, is the renovation of the old stadium site on the corner of Goldhaven and Robbins Road. That was an old ball stadium that is on the town of Islip public parkland. We've proposed to renovate that into a band shell. And that, we feel, will bring a walkable community. You can play a round of golf, you can go to see an event. Right now, they have movies and music events in that location already. We're going to renovate that so the town of Islip will be able to utilize that, and that will bring the community together. It'll be walkable from Islip Landing, it'll be walkable from Park Row, from Fairfield, from Courthouse Commons, and then you can enjoy an event and go across the street to the retail center to enjoy an evening out. So these are the types of things that we envision in this smart growth community to promote the walkability. I mean, again, what I said earlier, you see these communities in the Southeast being developed, and the first thing you see that they put in is a brewery and a coffee house. Brewery, coffee house, yogurt shop, all those types of things to keep the people on site, to keep the people engaged, an internet cafe, whatever it may be. These are the types of businesses we're looking to attract to promote both the residents here in the Belmont and Eastview and Central Islip at large. You're right. When you see a TGI Fridays, that's not necessarily the feel and look we are going for. And when you have the renovation of Robbins Hall, we envision as an entertainment facility, whether it be a brewery food hall or whether it be a Paramount type of development similar to the Arts Center in Huntington or that type of feature. Those are the types of things we're trying to attract here, and it's going to take the vision of this board and the town board to help us achieve that. Thank you.
Ed.
Oh, sorry.
Ms. Cruz took a lot of my questions, but I still have a few. My first just general question is you have, what, about 87 acres?
Yes,
So
between the two.
So why are you here asking for any relaxation?
In an
Plenty of
effort,
space to do something on those 87 acres, why do you need relaxations?
go ahead.
So we're up against the parking requirements versus the landscaping requirements. So there's a couple
You
sites.
also have some height requirements.
So there's a couple places where the parking requirement is making us exceed the landscaping requirements. So as Ms.
We're
Quinn
asking you to
said,
land bank parking spaces, correct?
we are, and as based on the planning report study, we're adding even more. So that would be incorporated into it. So we would still need the relaxation because the parking technically is not allowed in a buffer.
Can't you make the building smaller or less units to meet the requirements? That's sort of my question. You have 87 acres. You're building more and asking for relaxation. If you have the 87 acres, why can't you shrink your footprint so you don't need a relaxation? You're
Understood.
taking away
And
green
where
space.
there's,
You're taking away
and where
height.
there's opportunity, for instance, on the medical office building, we'll be looking into that. Obviously, with existing buildings, we aren't able to do that.
That's just my point. I mean, the community spoke a lot about the open space and the green, the areas that are there. Obviously, this would, improve the area, but why do we have to overbuild it to the point where you need a relaxation from us? Why can't you shrink the size of it so you don't need a relaxation? So you
Understood.
can preserve that. That's my first point. My second thing is really to Mr. Moriarty's point, which I don't think was really answered. Yes, there's a demand for rentals, but there's also a demand for homeownership. What you got to do is look at what's going on in the real estate market on Long Island. And I think that people who invest, whether it be Courthouse Commons or the others, who live there, have made that their home, who stay there for years versus rentals, which turn over sometimes quite often. So there's a demand for both. It's not a demand just for one. There's a demand for both. And why can't we increase the number of units that are for sale versus the number of units that are for rent? I'm not saying do away with the rentals, but why can't we increase the units that are for sale as well? It does create more of a community.
No, I totally understand, and I could appreciate what you're saying, but in the same light, one of the gentlemen got up tonight, and we're talking town of Islip, and he said, you're building senior citizen communities, can we find more tax relief for these condominium owners who are seniors because we can't afford the taxes? So you're up against a very difficult equation on how to manage that difference between rental housing and senior condominium ownership. And again, if we build an 11 or 1,200 square foot unit, you're looking at taxes between $8,000 and $10,000 a year. And in today's market, you will not be able to yield the purchase price in order to cover your construction costs. And that's the equation that is black and white and on paper between your site improvements and your vertical construction costs. You will not be able to sell those units at a rate that makes any feasible economic sense.
I can tell you, I mean, Courthouse Commons, when those units go on the market, they're gone pretty quickly. They don't stay on the market long. The prices have gone up, as well as some of the other developments along Central
Right, but those
Islip.
prices are, I think, somewhere around $400,000 a unit.
Correct. They're over about in the low fours right about now
Right.
for a two-bedroom there.
And the margins are extremely tight, and just from an economical standpoint, it's really difficult to make it pencil out.
I think it's something that needs to be looked at. I mean, to
Understood.
overburden a community with an excessive amount of rental units. What happens in the future? What does that mean? What does it mean to those that have bought over the years that own condos there? So that's a concern that I have. That
Understood.
it needs to be redressed. And to Ms. Cruz's point also, I mean, when you come up and make a presentation and you say we're giving 10% affordability, it rings a bit hollow when that's the requirement. If you're going to come up here and make that statement and you said it was 20% or something different, then it means a little more when you say it. I mean,
Understood.
so, it comes off to me that way is a little. And then I think just my last point here is, and it's sort of, I will speak to our consultants as well, because I read their comments and I've read the report. I have yet to meet a retained traffic consultant who has said that any traffic will be increased in an area where there's a traffic problem. How many parking spaces are there total in this entire phase 1, phase 2, and everything you want to do? Almost 3,000?
Well, we would defer to the town of Islip's third-party consultant that reviewed our study. And
No, I'm going to
work
speak
with
with them
them.
as well. I've never met a retained traffic consultant that has ever given an answer to the problem. The same thing in Bay Shore, and there are problems. I've driven through Central Islip. I'm alumni of Torrey Law School. I do go there from time to time.
Right.
I can tell you, I go to the courthouse often. I know that there's traffic. I know they say the roadways can accommodate it. Everybody says the roadways can accommodate it, but people moved out to the island for something that's a little different than I think they're getting by overbuilding. And I would happily meet with your traffic consultant and happily speak to the town one, but those are the concerns and the issues I have. I think it's a great project. I think you guys have done good work. I think, something needs to go there. I just think we need to look at how it's being done, why we need relaxations, ownership versus rentals, and also what can be done for traffic. I mean, those traffic circles, this is not the UK where people are blowing through those things and are making a mockery of what's been done on Eastview Drive, and those poor people who live there have a problem as well. The other thing I just want to ask you, in terms of I know I've followed the developments of most of the rental units on Long Island. I know you're offering a special to first responders, which brings that rent down. What percentage, the prices you quoted, is that the full rent, or is that the reduced rent that's being offered to first
No, it's
responders?
less 10% for first responders.
So the numbers that you've quoted here today, are those already taking 10% off?
No.
When you said the average rent for a one-bedroom is?
No, those
That's
are
the full
those are
rent.
those are the rents that we were offering the starting prices at. That was less than 10%. So if you were a first responder in a studio, you were renting for about $1,760 a month.
And of the 100 or so you rented, what percentage took advantage of that discount?
Oh, quite a bit. I'd say probably 30%.
I'm right. So that, I mean, again, the demand may be there, but the demand that you're seeing is for a much lower rent than what you just quoted here this evening. If you're saying most of those are the 10%.
Well, they were also taking advantage of a program. So, and
Absolutely.
that's a program as long as they live there in
Just want to make the
perpetuity.
record clear. I just,
Right, and just with regards to the overall traffic comment, I believe, and I'd have to double check my numbers, at one point, the Central Islip Psychiatric Center housed over 10,000 residents and employees. So there was traffic on the road. But we will look further into the traffic. And
I don't want to talk about residents in the psychiatric center driving in the red. Let's just leave it at that. You have a project that I think could be beneficial to the community. I think some more effort needs to be put into it in terms of making it work the right way. And that's just my statement.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Matamore.
I have one perhaps last comment. For those of you who spoke about Eastview Drive, I'm on Eastview Drive usually 4 days a week, sometimes going out to the north, getting on Lowell Avenue, going up to by the train station. Going through that light by the train station is a nightmare. And it's getting worse and worse, and it's going to get still worse with this project. It is a speedway. It's dangerous. But I have to obviously say to the developer and builder that planning a project of this size is not an easy thing to do, and they're doing their best to come through. But on the subject of Eastview Drive, it's a problem now. We know it's going to be a bigger problem in the future. So I don't want you, ladies and gentlemen, to think that we don't hear you. We hear you. We don't know if we have the solutions yet, and this builder is very cooperative in trying to find solutions. I don't know if speed bumps make any sense. I don't know what makes any sense, but certainly Eastview Drive is not going to be the answer to this traffic situation if we don't slow it down, and people are going to get hurt. That's a concern. Perhaps when it was originally planned, not by this developer, Eastview Drive just doesn't do it. And you're already seeing the problems with Eastview Drive. So I just wanted to add to what's been said that we up here are aware of that. And I'm very aware of it. I see it every day. And it scares me for your sakes as well as anybody who uses it. I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. The applicant like to add anything further?
We don't.
Is there a motion? Mr. Moore, Ms. Cruz. Ms. Cruz.
Yeah, Ms. Cruz.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing and reserve a decision to listen, to work with planning and all of us. Thank you.
It's a motion by Ms. Cruz to close the public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, we're reserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good
Go
evening.
off the record for a minute so everybody can step out from this one. We'll go to the next application. Yeah. If the applicant for number 6 is here, you can come up and set up if you'd like.
So is that.
That was fun. You hit the nail on the head with regard to the architecture. It just went.
Yeah.
There's no connection.
And they conceded.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah, they couldn't argue that point.
Yeah, it wasn't arguable. It was funny because when you said it, the focal point of the development, I'm like, really?
You put it for me.
You said it. Russ said it was a psychiatric facility. Well, how come your medical building doesn't look
Anything like what you're talking about.
If I can ask just everybody to take the conversations out into the hallway. We have other people to be heard this evening. All right, we're going to go back on the record.
Into that complex every day because of the courthouse. And
Item,
potential compatriot at the other end of the table?
Item 6 on the agenda, Town Board application, public hearing, Evan Crandall, CZ 2023-015, south side of Veterans Memorial Highway, State Route 454, approximately 1,164 feet west of Lincoln Boulevard, Hauppauge, 850 Veterans Memorial Highway. Applicant requests a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 4470 in order to allow a fitness center, retail market, meeting room, and outdoor amenities as accessory uses to a hotel for the exclusive use of hotel guests. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and planning board members. Just before I start, I just want to thank the planning staff. I do this in a lot of places for larger corporation companies that we represent. And you really have a top-notch staff in terms of dealing with this stuff on a daily basis. So I just wanted to point that out to you as I compare it to the rest of the state that I get to travel around in. My name is Mike Relier. I'm an attorney at Schenker, Russo, and Clark up in Albany, New York. We represent the owners, Evan Crandall and KREHIPRES, Hauppauge Owner LLC. I'll give you a kind of a quick summary, and then we can get into any specific details that you need to. I'll get in the background immediately after that. So we operate as a residence inn, Marriott Residence Inn. We have hotel amenities as such as a residence inn would have. New owners came in, acquired this last year. And as a result of our due diligence during the closing, it was discovered that the previous owner did not necessarily adhere to all the terms and conditions of the deeds and covenants and restrictions. So while I don't think they're terrible, we wanted to clarify those, especially as a new owner comes in and wants to operate that. So really what we're asking for is what, in my opinion, is nothing more than just how a normal Marriott Residence Inn operates and to operate in that area as such. Quick background, March 9th, 1999, the town council of the town of Islip voted to file a declaration of covenants and restrictions on the parcel in question. The restrictions were the result of a change of zone from residents of AAA district to a general services or a GSE district in order to construct a 143-unit extended stay hotel on the property. Specifically, what we're looking at, well, I have given staff recommendations on some language changes, and we've haven't had an opportunity to go back and forth on this. I'm just presenting it here for the first time with that. Basically, it's really section 2 that comes into question of the deeds and my apologies, it's been a long day. The covenants and restrictions. Specifically, they serve food, but they don't make it there. It's all without the hood. They don't prepare. It's all prepackaged meals, and they serve breakfast there. So there's a question of whether or not that falls into a restaurant. We personally don't believe that it does, but restaurants are prohibited on that site. We have a 3-treadmill exercise room. Does that classify as a gymnasium? Personally, don't believe that does. I think more of that restriction was to get at trying to prevent this site from growing into a large conference center. So we want to make sure that we can still operate and offer those amenities. We're not supposed to have conference rooms. We have a area breakfast room that's 70, that the breakfast area was considered a conference room because it's a larger room and it's used for small other purposes. We cannot require to have a gift shop. We're not allowed to have a gift shop. We would like to be able to sell hotel amenities, combs, toothbrushes, packaged food to the residents at the hotel. And then the one thing that we're not allowed to have is playgrounds or sports courts or a swimming pool. We have an indoor pool, not an outdoor. The restriction speaks to outdoor pool. And we would like, as most other Marriott residents have, is to allow 1,000 square foot courtyard area to be used by the residents of the Marriott. So there are proposed language changes in there that would allow these types of uses. It's really just for the hotel guests. We're not growing into a conference center. We're just trying to operate as a typical Marriott resident does in any other community. And we wouldn't be here if we didn't find it under the new ownership that we were asking for. They will, in full disclosure, the reason we found this is because we want to be able to sell bottled beer and wine to guests at the hotel out of a kiosk. Liquor license got a little skewed when they saw those terms and conditions. So we still would like to have a kiosk area where we can sell wine and beer and small food and soda and water and drinks. So that would be our retail.
I don't think anybody on the board has a problem with the amenities you're seeking. My quick question for you is what is your average stay time-wise of your guests at a Residence Inn?
I have Miss Marjorie Monty here, who's the property manager. She's right here.
Just use the microphone. She's keeping a record.
Right now, average length of stay is about 20, 25 nights per guest.
And they corporate clients generally, or?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything further from the board in terms of questions? You certainly can continue if you'd like. But
no, you don't. Thank you, sir.
Sometimes you get in trouble if you continue for too long. So why don't we turn to Mr. Colgan for a report, and then if there are any questions, we'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes to permit customary accessory uses for an existing hotel. Prior to this, the property had been the subject of a change of zone to General Service E back in 1999. The amenities requested are commonly found in most hotels. The planning staff believes that such amenities are essential for modern hotels to be successful. And obviously, I believe it's obvious that the town would like to see this hotel remain successful. So based on that, the staff would recommend that the board grant the application subject to the staff drafting, typical covenants and restrictions enabling the amenities for the hotel.
Any questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
Nothing.
Is there a motion? Mr. Frugieri?
I'll make a motion to close this public hearing, grant this application, subject to the applicant and staff working out covenants and restrictions.
Motion to close the public hearing and grant the application, subject to the applicant and staff working out acceptable covenants and restrictions. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Item 7, Town Board Application Public Hearing, Fifth Avenue Rentals LLC, CZ 2023-016, southeast corner of North Clinton Avenue and Howells Road, County Route 57, through lot to Fifth Avenue, County Route 13, Bay Shore 207 North Clinton Avenue. Applicant requests a change of zone from Residence B District to General Service T District in order to construct a medical office building. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Raymond Justo, 715 South Country Road, West Bay Shore, New York, 11706 for the applicant. Fifth Avenue Rentals. This is obviously an application for a change of zone of the property to allow construction of a 10,000 square foot medical office building. I'd like to introduce some people who are here with me tonight to speak and to answer questions you may have. First is Jacqueline Peranto from Key Civil Engineering. She'll go over the site plan, the zoning requirements, and the character of the area. Sean Mulryan from Mulryan Engineering, he performed the traffic study, and we've also heard there may be some questions with regard to that. He's also prepared to answer tonight. Michael Dunn from Michael Dunn Associates is our architect. And lastly, the principal of the applicant, Dr. Louis Fandos, is with us as well tonight. I know it's already been a long night. I'll speak as briefly as I can. We believe this application represents the highest and best use of this property. I think it's important for the board to note that according to the certificate of occupancy, the property was originally zoned Business 1. And there was a change of zone application that was granted in 1991 to change it from Business 1 to residential. That was, according to the C of O, that was under TC number 3905. We've worked over the last several months or longer than that, very closely with the planning department on location of the entrances, layout, the pitch of the roof, the appearance of the building. And I believe that we've met all of those concerns and demands from the planning department. The original concept of this application was to do a change of zone to GSD. And we did meet every zoning requirement under GSD. At the suggestion of the planning department, they requested that we change the application to a change of zone to GST, despite the fact that there are some variances regarding height and FAR. They just felt that was a better zone for this particular use of the property. So we have done that, and we've changed the application. And so at this point, I think it's important for me to introduce you to Jacqueline Peranto, who will talk to you about the site plan and so forth.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jacqueline Peranto. I'm principal at Key Civil Engineering, located at 664 Blue Point Road, Holtsville, New York, 11742. Here representing the applicant and property owner. The subject parcel is located on the south side of Howells Road between North Clinton Avenue and Fifth Avenue. Both Howells Road and Fifth Avenue are under the jurisdiction of Suffolk County Department of Public Works. The parcel is approximately a little over 1 acre. It is listed on the Suffolk County tax map as District 500, Section 340, Block 2, Lot 30. The property is currently vacant and is zoned Residence B. Along Howells Road, immediately adjacent to the west, is a dentist office, zoned Business 2. Beyond is residential use and boundary of the Village of Brightwaters. To the south of the subject property is zoned residential. To the east is auto parts retail store, zoned Business 3, and across Howells Road to the north is a commercial retail strip center, zoned Business 1, consisting of mixed use. The corner opposite the subject parcel to the northeast is a gas station, zoned Business 3. The proposed project shall consist of rezoning the parcel to General Service T zone and developing a 2-story medical office with a footprint of 5,000 square feet and a total GFA of 10,000 square feet. The site plan presented requires variances for lot area and for parking in a front yard from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Rezoning this parcel to allow business use is appropriate and within the character of the neighborhood. Commercial uses surround the property to the northeast and west. The site plan places the building at the north side of the property with parking to the south and west.
The property will consist of a 25-foot wide evergreen buffer adjacent to the residential properties to the south. Placement of the parking in the front yard cannot be avoided as our site has 3 frontages. The parking is set back about 15 feet from Howells Road, which is about 2 times farther than the building adjacent to us to the west. And the parking adjacent to North Clinton Avenue and Fifth Avenue frontages are set back 8 feet in compliance with the town SDLR requirements and development, and also consistent with the other developments in the area if you look down Fifth Avenue, as well as the shopping center across the street from us. The parking provided includes 5 land bank stalls and complies with the requirement of 67 parking stalls. As stated in the LKMA memorandum dated 9/20/2023, the town's traffic consultant indicates 45 stalls is warranted, and therefore it can be concluded that our land bank stalls will most likely not need to be constructed in the future. The other variance that will be needed for this is lot area. The code for the GST is a maximum of 40,000 square foot lot area. Our property is 47,130 square feet, which would require 17.9% variance. Although the lot area exceeds the maximum lot area for the GST zone, the proposed building would still be compliant with the 25% maximum, 25% FAR of a 40,000 square foot lot. Access into the site is provided from North Clinton Avenue and Fifth Avenue. Due to the median in Fifth Avenue, this access drive will only allow rights in and rights out. Submission has been made to Suffolk County DPW, and they had minimal comments, of which have been addressed on the plans we've submitted to the town. The property will also be improved with new drainage, connection to public sewers, site area lighting, all in compliance with town design standards and requirements. Area lights will be mounted 14 foot above grade, shielded to not spill on any adjoining properties or roadways. Lights are designed at 3000 K LED and have a decorative lantern appearance to fit in with that residential feel. Landscaping is also provided along all the parking rows to shield headlights, as well as decorative plants at the end islands, as well as a substantial buffer in the rear adjacent to residential. I'm going to turn it over to our architect to speak a little bit more about the building.
Good evening. It's Michael Dunn, architect, at 256 Orinoco Drive in Brightwaters, New York, 11718. So we did design the building to have a residential feel to it. It is 5,000 square foot footprint and 2 stories, but we will incorporate a roof line, a mansard roof that will incorporate mechanical equipment and storage only. There will be the front door that faces north to Howells and a door to access from the parking on the south side. It is mostly brick with some stucco and white trim and white cornice. So we were back and forth with planning a little bit and can take any other comments too that go along to upgrade anything along with the building.
Good evening. My name is Sean Mulryan Engineering, 1225 Franklin Avenue, Garden City, New York. We prepared the traffic engineering report for the subject site. That report is dated August 16th, 2023. The report was submitted to the town and was then sent out to LKMA McLean for review. Earlier this morning, we received a memo from the consulting engineering firm that includes 5 bullets. I'd like to just go through those. The first bullet states that the subject site is located on a county road. I'd just like to clarify that not only is Fifth Avenue a county road, but so is Howells. So the site is located on 2 county roads and 1 town road, the town road being North Clinton. The application also, or the report also submitted information about the number of trips generated by the subject site. The consulting engineer was in agreement with the calculations provided in the report. Number 3 in the comment letter goes through a few issues that are, I believe, misinterpretations or things that we need to clarify with the engineer. or the consulting engineer. We were asked to prepare a summary LOS or level of service table, which we submitted this morning. But again, we received these comments earlier today, so we understand that there's some additional work that still needs to be done from the outside consulting firm. One of the other things that was mentioned was accident analysis. We did order accident analysis for the subject site. We did receive it after the report was submitted. However, the reports that we obtained from the New York State Department of Transportation are within the most recent 3-year history. The comment that was issued this morning specifically states that they are looking, or the town is looking for accident data outside of the influence of COVID. So we need to just determine with planning exactly what dates we should include and then obtain those accident records, which essentially will be from a few years ago before the shutdown. And then the final comment that was issued by the consulting engineer concerned the parking on the subject site. Once again, as Mrs. Paranto mentioned, the subject site requires 67 parking spaces and 76 are provided. 5 of those are land banked. The description from the consulting engineer goes through the fact that based on the Institute of Transportation Parking Generation Manual, 28 to 32 spaces are anticipated on average, and they used a conservative analysis of the 85th percentile demand being 45 parked vehicles for the subject site. So again, there's ample parking on the subject site to accommodate the proposed use. We believe that any modifications that are required based on the comment letter will not change the net result of the report that was submitted, in which indicates that no off-site mitigation measures are required and that the subject site will not impact the level of service or capacity on the surrounding roadway network. Once again, as was mentioned earlier, the subject site is located on 2 county roads, and therefore the subject site and any work within the right-of-way is subject to review and approval by the Suffolk County Department of Public Works. Mrs. Paranto's office has been working diligently with the county to lay out the driveways as proposed, and we believe that the traffic impact study can be revised and that the sum and substance of the conclusions therein will not substantially change in any way based on the comments we received this morning. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them, and I will be here for questions following the presentation. Thank you very much.
So we're ready to answer any questions you may have or to let the public be heard.
We'll go to public comment. Ms. Frugiero call.
Alma Cruz.
Good evening. My name is Alma Cruz. I live at 136 North Clinton Avenue, just down from the site that they want to build on. I've been there 39 years. What is this medical building for? We're not being told anything. We need to know what it's for. We need to know what they're going to house in there, what kind of traffic problems, because before they came in, someone else owned the property who wanted to put homes there and were told no because the entrance and exit of the driveways were clogging up the traffic. So how is it that this big place is now going to be allowed to do this? I mean,
Good question.
all of my neighbors need answers. 39 years is a long time to be there. And most of my neighbors have been there as long as I have, or maybe longer. What is it they're putting there? Very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Bartlett.
My name is Mark Barnett, and my wife and I, we ran away from Queens some 28 years ago when we purchased this property with our kids. My kids are now fully grown and have moved away, but we have grands. And I look around and I see young families going back and forth on this block. The old adage, it's gonna increase traffic congestion, Yes, it's an adage. It's real. It's true. Because I see that on the strip right across. The ingress and egress from our block is sometimes made worse because of the traffic from the shopping center that's right across. So if we're going to have something directly on the entrance and exit from our block, it's going to be yet that much worse. They want to put medical offices. We don't need medical offices. Why? Because just northwest, 2 chains up, well, 2 lights just beyond Sunrise Highway. Their signage, medical office availability. They're constructing now diagonally from that, which are going to house medical facilities. Just around the corner from Fifth Avenue, heading north, 2 lights down, there used to be a dentist's office there. There is now a signage, medical office availability. You head south, going to Main Street on Fifth Avenue, just slightly east of that, there's signage, medical office availability. Why do we need more medical offices? I mean, there are like three open spaces in the strip just right across that are open, which can be assigned to be medical offices. Why do we need more medical offices? Also, it's a green space. You're now just going to pave that over, which is going to contribute what we now know about the environmental impact of, runoffs as opposed to a green space. New York City is now trying to revert to go back to green spaces. And I ran away from New York City. I'm here on Long Island. I need my green space. And that's pretty much what I have to say.
Jennifer Morales.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me have this opportunity to speak. I live at 156 North Clinton, also on the block. While they do say we are a county road, but more importantly, we are a residential block with young families, as well as many small children. Traffic on our block is currently a nightmare. We have people doing well over 40 miles an hour down our residential block. Ever since they put the no turn on red on Howells to make the turn going southbound on Fifth Avenue, people use our block as a cut through. They proceed to fly down our block to avoid the light and make the left onto Real and the right back out onto Fifth Avenue. With that being said, we would like to know, one, if this is approved, we would like a few things to take into consideration. One, we would like stop signs or speed humps placed on our block, as well as having the entrance and exit that is currently being proposed for our block pushed up more towards Howells Road, as well as having the exit from Howells Road be made to have a sharp right turn, basically making people go back out onto Howells instead of coming down our residential block. We would also, as my other neighbors have said, we would like to know the exact medical offices that are going into the proposed building. What would the hours of the operations be? There are 2 residential homes that are going to back up to this medical building. I do apologize, this may have been addressed, but at the minimum, the buffer that should be placed in between the parking lot and the 2 residential houses should be of mature trees to allow our neighbors to enjoy their property. Thank you for your time.
Frank and Kim Lombardi.
Good evening. My name is Frank Lombardi. I live at 160 North Clinton Avenue with my wife. And we just have concerns with, like everyone else is saying, like, what is the building used for? What are the hours? Right now, at times, you know, we already live, our house is directly across from the water authority. So it already doesn't feel like a residential area for us, specifically on our block, because we have spotlights shining into our house and all kinds of other stuff. So now, with this being further down our street and you have an exit onto our block, you know, it's just going to be even more cars, because the cars already now, they don't respect any speed limit or anything. Like, we don't have children personally, but there are other neighbors that do. And you never see kids playing in the street because it just can't happen because of the way the street is. So it's not that I'm opposed to this building, because it is an empty lot and the building would make it nice. But the problem is how are you guys going to accommodate for all of the extra cars that are going to go flying down our block now? Maybe don't have an exit on Clinton at all. Have the exit on Howells and Fifth Avenue so that people just stay off of our block. Or maybe, like another neighbor said, you know, stop signs or something to try to slow people down. That's main concern.
Rosa Vella. Rosa Vella. Okay. Ranolfo Sanchez.
Good evening. My name is Ranulfo Sanchez. I live just across from the firehouse. I've been there for a long time as well. And I have there's a lot of traffic, like everybody else has said over here. And we have the firehouse in front of us. That's enough noise sometimes. And to have more traffic in that area is going to be chaotic. I had never been in a procedure like this before in my life, but from what I'm hearing, none of us agree with this construction. And I guess we have to be listened. Something has to be, I don't know if there is a way to stop this or not. Otherwise, it does not make any sense for me to be here and say, no, we don't agree, and still gonna go on with this project. I don't agree with this. I think it will affect the value of the properties that surround this area. And I think that's a big concern for everybody. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Donna Marzino.
Good evening, board members. My name is Donna. My maiden name is O'Rourke, and I've been on the block at 190 North Clinton for over 60 years. I've been there when that house was a farmland. And right across where the dentist is was actually the farm stand. So that building was never built for a dentist. That building was there since 1960. I have a serious problem. I know that there was 3 police officers that bought that property and could do nothing with it because of the zoning. I don't understand how all of a sudden there's zoning capability for a doctor to put a building there. Can you explain to us how that happened? Does anybody know? None of us know. That was residential zoned as farming land. How did you go ahead and rezone that? Was anybody on the block notified? No, we have a serious question with that. I have grandchildren. I walk up the block. There's a school there. There's an elementary school there. Half the block have children. How are we going to have a medical building? And how big is the block alone? The block is a small block. It's a dead-end block. It makes no sense to us. I don't understand how the town could go ahead and rezone this. Can somebody tell us, was that building rezoned? Because as far as I know, that's always been farmland. Is it still farmland? And how is the doctor able to change that? The 3 police officers couldn't do it. They sold the property. I have serious questions.
Thank you.
Serious questions.
Wavalina Menjava. Menjivar.
My name is Juvelina Menjivar Sanchez, and I'm coming from Brooklyn. And when I came to Long Island, I feel like I will be in a son that is a private place. Even I said, oh, it's better for my son to be in Long Island and in a public school than a private school in the city. And I was so happy to move to Long Island. So at this time, the question is that the corner property, they want to build medical office. And I think we have enough already there. The problem is the parking. And we are in front of the fire department. We get used to the noise, but the traffic is still a problem. It's a very chaotic problem. And if you see the record of the police department, all the accidents had happened there. Even on the property next to us, one elderly was driving and he lost control and the fence went off and the trees, and we see that in front of our house. So it is very difficult to understand how this property, this residential property will become as a general service district, as this plan they want to have these constructions. And I will say, I think we, as a residents and Bay Shore, and as I think a convenient and it's not benefits to the town, we have the right to keep our property as a residence because my child has children now. So I'm a grandma and I expect to see them very often. So we have a stop school there where the children take the bus, and we have seniors. And I think that we have to consider that this property, it has to maintain as a residence, and we have the right to raise our voice and say that, yes, we have a right to keep it like that because we don't need more medical centers. Every corner we turn is a Norwell, is a medical center, and we have enough. I think that's a good business for everybody, for these rich people. But I think we don't need medical centers anymore. We have to, as a suggestion, will be nice if we suggest this property divided in 2 and make another beautiful house, family house. Thank you.
Kay Abruscato.
Why don't you buy it? They'll do it. It's been up for sale for 40 years.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Abruscato. I'm from 202 North Clinton Avenue. As it is, the shopping center, the strip mall on Howells Road, the owners and workers come and park on North Clinton because they want to leave space for their customers to park in the parking lot, which is too small. As a grandmother, to have more traffic coming out directly in front of my house, the children will have no sidewalk to play on. Where are my grandchildren going to play? As a resident, I need to park in front of my house. We all know for a fact that the medical buildings overbook and people will end up parking in my spot. Where am I supposed to park? There is no reason to have another medical building there. It's a residential street, and I like to keep it residential. Thank you.
Nick Rosetto?
I think my wife and I have lived at 201 North Clinton Avenue for 35 years. Although after what I have to say, I'm probably going to have to move. I'm kind of for the medical building, not so much for the medical building, but I don't want it residential because it's going to be 3 or 4 more houses, 3 more, there's probably absentee landlords, and I'd rather deal with a medical building, something like that. As far as the buffer zone, I think it said something about evergreen trees put in. I'd rather have the Leyland cypress, about 12 footers, so they're actually doing something for me before I die. You know, I'm 65 years old. By the time these trees get big enough, the evergreens ain't gonna make a difference to me. But like I say, it's between a rock and a hard place. It's, you know, I'm not for the medical building. I just don't want 3 or 4 more houses over there. It's just don't make sense. And as far as I think Jennifer Morales kind of covered the rest of the things I was going to ask about. You know, I flood when we get in heavy rain. It floods right in front of my house, but they're going to say they're taking care of the drainage or something like that. They're going to address that. And I think that's about. I just wrote all this stuff down tonight. So. Oh, and the exit, the entrance coming off of Fifth Avenue, coming into the parking lot's okay. The exit is kind of close to my property. It's about 20, 25 feet off. If you move it up by the dentist office or something down the other end, it'd be a little better. And I think that's pretty much all I have to say. Like I said, between a rock and a hard place. I want to put the trees back that way there before they pull them all out. And that was a real nice spot. Anyway, that's that. Thank you.
Carlos Taveras?
Hello. Good evening, everybody. Carlos Taveras, 200 Fifth Avenue. I'm right behind this new project that's coming up, and Nick is my neighbor. So just to put a little clarity to what he's saying, is this 2-story building. It's gonna allow everybody on the second floor to look at my wife's when she's outside sunbathing, Nick's wife, when I'm outside, no privacy whatsoever. To say what my other neighbors have said, some people say, oh, it looks like Manhattan, it looks like Queens. I came from Brooklyn, so I know what I ran from, and now I've been in that property for 20 years. My wife and I both have 2 jobs each to pay the taxes in Bayshore that are very, very high. And we work very hard and say, hey, you know something? At least we have this home, at least we're in Bayshore now. Bayshore is unrecognizable. Like the other gentleman said from Central Islip, and I feel for all you guys that have to sit here and make these decisions. It's too many buildings. Everybody's building everywhere. It's a little lot. There's a 5-story family building coming up, and that's why Nick is saying we're between a rock and a hard place, because we also don't want 14 apartment buildings being built in this location. Like I said, I'm right behind it. If you look at your maps, when that red light turns green, is a speedway. That Fifth Avenue, they come hurling down. So we're the first right after that light on Howells. Myself, I teach my kids, my wife, from the light, we start putting our blinkers on and we drive at 10 miles an hour and they're honking. And I'm like, I don't care, honk away. You know why? Because every other day, people are slamming into each other when you try to make a turn into that. And I'm not saying don't do the project. I'm not saying approve it, don't approve it. It's just gonna be a nightmare. And what Nick is saying with the trees, if you're gonna approve it, from day one, they have to have some 15-foot trees, 20-foot trees that will not allow the second story of that building to look into our back property. You know, we're gonna be affected directly to that. So I don't know. I wanna thank you for your time. And like I said, once again, I know it's a hard job for you guys, but I don't know how I feel about this. Thank you.
That's right.
Good evening, Chairman, board members. My name is Mahesh Shashikumar. I reside on 154 North Clinton Avenue. I'm here today. I'm not terribly opposed to the building, not happy about it. I'd prefer to see a park. It's a gorgeous piece of land. There's a school right across the street. I have kids on the block. I have friends that have kids on the block. But the biggest problem I have is the traffic. Like my other neighbors mentioned before, people come flying down North Clinton Avenue. There's actually a no outlet sign in front that I recently learned that they came to a council meeting and got it installed. But everybody disregards it. They come flying down there. We're pretty close to the Southern State Parkway and the service road. There's a curve that goes right onto Howells and flies straight down towards, I forget the name of the street, but past Fifth Avenue. So there have been multiple altercations where I have tried to slow down drivers coming down that street. Even got into, my wife got assaulted at one point trying to slow people down. What we are proposing, or at least asking for, is the exit on North Clinton Avenue has to be a right turn only. Or put up some stop signs, speed bumps, just something so I don't have to stand in the middle of the street while my kids are riding their bike. Along with that, a two-story building in that neighborhood just looks really out of place. My neighbors had mentioned that their property line is right along it and they would have no privacy. I'm losing train of thought here. But it just feels really out of place. I feel like the traffic frequency would increase over there. There have already been, to my knowledge, at least 2 deaths in the past year off of Howells Road, just coming off that curve. And everybody who wants to stop at that red light, they try to avoid it by coming down our block. And either Waze or Google Maps or other navigation sources are gonna tell you to go down that block to avoid the light, to avoid traffic. I wish there was something I could say to deter the building of this. I would, like I said, love to see a park over there, more green space. I moved out to Long Island from Brooklyn as well. And I came here for the safety of my kids. And that's what I'm asking for, just to make sure that these builders consider that before even starting.
Karen Ibarros.
My name is Karen Ebanks Barnett.
Oh, Ebanks? Okay, looks like a Barros.
No problem. Just like everyone else said, basically putting that medical building there, I believe will be more traffic. When we first bought our home, we have our kids are grown, yes, but we have our grandkids. Kids are not playing outside anymore because people have learned that they can come down our block and turn, make a left and going on Real Place, especially now that they put you can't turn on red. So now everybody uses our block. So now our children can't go out, and there's so many new families now that have young kids. Kids are trying to ride their bike, play ball with the basketball. It's going to be a problem. The traffic has really gotten bad. Now, I will say with the dentist that's there, it's been there when I bought my home, but it's not a busy place. It's not open every day either. So it wasn't so bad. But now that we have all the traffic, if everybody starts to pay attention, that seems to be the biggest problem now on Long Island, period, that traffic is becoming a problem. You want to live in Long Island and enjoy. I understand it's a private property. We can't put a park there because it's private park. You can't tell people what to do with their property. But at the same time, they can't embark on a residential road. I do understand with my neighbors, with the two that right next door to it, I only can imagine how they're feeling because I can understand what they're saying, because we have all these buildings that are being built and rental, and a lot of these people are renting, but our schools are becoming overcrowded. They don't pay taxes, but our taxes go up. And we're paying a lot, but we're putting all these rentals, and these people are getting the same, yes, opportunity, but they're not paying the taxes that we're paying. And the schools are overcrowded, so then that becomes an issue. And I will say, Bayshore School District has always been a very good school district. Now, if you keep messing it up, people are going to move away from it, and then what? Then what are we gonna have? People are now leaving Long Island because of the traffic. And they're moving back to the city because they're saying, if we're gonna have the same traffic, I might as well go closer to the city to enjoy the city. So what we need to do is figure out something else. And I agree. The ones that live right next door, I agree. They don't want to get buildings where you have rentals, but we also don't want a medical building there either. We want to keep it as residential as we can so we can enjoy it. Our property value don't go down. Like, we need to make sure that we can enjoy our block. That's the reason why a lot of us bought our homes. We just can't see having a facility there. We have enough in Bayshore. We have enough Northville facilities here. We don't need an additional one. Thank you.
Those are all the cards I have. Anybody else wish to be heard on this? Just come on up and please fill out a card afterwards.
Good evening. I just wanted to speak on behalf, support my neighbors and everything. And I'm Anthony Graham. I live on Fifth Avenue, and nervous. I never really spoke in front of everybody like this, but I support what they're saying and everything. And I did have a concern with the medical building, not knowing what type of medical building it would be. And I thought that they should at least let us know what it is before they bring that on. And the traffic is crazy too, by the way. And I just had a daughter, and she's traumatized by all the motorcycles and everything that come revving their engine by us and everything. So the traffic is also going to be more of a problem. And I could also tell already it'll definitely be more accidents over by that way, just because turning on the Howells is going to be crazy. So like I said, I just wanted to support my neighbors and the community, and I agree with what they're saying. And if they build it, it is what it is, but I feel like they at least owe us to let us know what it is and everything, and give us more details on it. And that's it.
Hi, my name is Erin Burke. I live at 155 North Clinton Avenue, Bayshore. Very nervous right now, but I feel like I need to go on record. I just moved there in 2017 with my family. I have 3 small girls. One of them goes up the block to Fifth Avenue, so sometimes we walk to school. We have friends, kids that go to school with her as well, that we walk. We can't go outside to play. I had to buy one of those bright little guys with the flag to say slow down, because we can't go out on our block because the cars, obviously you've heard before, drive so fast. But we tried to be outside, so we put that out because obviously we don't want to not be able to play outside. But I just feel like with this building and bringing more people to the area, and even Howells too, I know there was people who have died on Howells. So between Fifth Avenue and Howells, and people cutting down our block, it's just everywhere. And when you try to cross to walk to school to Fifth Avenue, cars won't even let you pass. You'll stand there with small kids and they just fly right by you. And it's so dangerous. I would love, it's so close. It's ridiculous to drive, but most of the time I will drive because I don't feel safe. So I just feel like, again, I just wanted to go on record because I just feel like there's so many things that should be worked out, and we should be, notified of what the building is and what's going to be put in place to keep us and our children and our families safe. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. That's everyone who wants to be heard. I'm going to turn to Mr. Colgan for a report. Just state your name for the record and then go ahead.
My name is Sandra Sesikumar. I live on 154 North Clinton. And like, as a show of hands, how many of us are here for that project? It's pretty much all of us, right? Yeah. And I think, like, we're all being super wordy, but the thing is that we live in a residential area and it doesn't have a residential feel. It's a 30-mile zone, right? I don't even think we have a 30-mile speed limit posted. And I don't even think that no outlet, a sign, I don't know why it was put up there. It just deters nobody. They cut right through our block down to rail to get back onto Fifth Avenue. And vice versa. Okay, so they do it both ways. We can't stop whatever it is you guys are putting up. I'm pretty sure we can't stop it. We would love to know what it is, but if you could just take into consideration, move up the parking lot closer to the house, move up the entrance closer to the house. Please, 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 if you can do something. I mean, it's hard for us to get stuff done. You can probably get it done. If you can get like maybe a children at play sign or anything like that, honestly. If, you know, that's all we're asking for. That's all we're asking for. We're not here to like make it crazy. It's already like not, it should be a nicer block than it is. That's our point. You know what I mean? Like, we don't feel insulated the way we should for the property taxes that we pay and for the area that it is. That's it. That's our point.
What's that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes a medical office building on vacant property currently zoned for single-family dwellings. Prior to this, the property had been the subject of a change of zone from Business 1 to Residence B on a town board motion back in 1991. The reason for the rezoning was that the original parcel was split zone residential, and that would serve to clarify the zoning of the property. The proposed general service T district is generally preferred in areas where neighborhoods transition from residential to commercial and along thoroughfares where retail traffic is not desired, but residential character is. The surrounding area consists of single-family homes, strip retail, offices, a gas station, as well as the Bayshore Fire Department. The proximity of the site to a busy intersection can suggest that a single-family development may not be the most compatible at this specific location. A traffic study was submitted by the applicant. The town's traffic consultant indicated that, based on a cursory review, that the highway capacity could not be definitively evaluated, nor was a crash analysis submitted. These items should be submitted and evaluated prior to this board making a recommendation to the town board. The conceptual site plan exceeds landscaping requirements. The site plan shows landscape stalls, several of which do not appear viable. Thus, a parking relaxation is likely needed. A variance would also be needed from the Zoning Board of Appeals for exceeding the maximum lot area requirement. The building elevations that they submitted are residential in nature as required by the General Service T District. We did hear a lot of comments tonight that the staff would like to evaluate both with Town's Division of Traffic Safety as well as the County Department of Public Works. So the staff would recommend that the board reserve decision tonight.
Questions from the board?
Mr.
Frugieri.
My first question is actually for planning, if they can answer it. There were several people that asked, you know, why were the previous owners not able to develop this property?
I mean, I'm personally unaware of any submitted minor subdivision plan, or I guess it would be a major subdivision based on the size of the lot. You know, each site presumably is going to have its own driveway, so it's possible that the county may have objections, but again, without having a formal submission to either engineering or receiving any direct feedback from the county, I couldn't definitely tell you whether or not it's viable.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question is for the applicant. The medical office is a broad term. What type of medical office do you see there? What type of practices?
It's, at this moment, there's a possibility that our client, the principal that's here tonight, it could be a company that he is affiliated with, or, you know, a medical office, but it could also be a tenant that he rents out to. So we cannot tell you definitively. We can tell you it's not, we're not making an application for a surgical center. We are making an application for general medical offices. And I would like, if I could just maybe address some of the concerns so I could.
Well, after I guess our questions, I mean, because I can understand building a building on spec, and you might not be able to detail what specific uses you're going to go in there, but for this board to feel comfortable even considering something like this, there may be uses we want to prohibit as a different types of medical uses that we could prohibit. Is that something that's acceptable?
That's something we can discuss.
Okay.
If we reserve decision tonight, which it looks like that's what we're doing, of course, we can discuss that.
Okay. So then you wouldn't be able to answer questions like hours of operation?
Certainly not.
Okay.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I just want, we do appreciate the comments of the audience. And I would like to point out a couple of things. I know there was, someone stated there's a concern regarding being able to look into their property. The building, the southern part of the building is 104 feet north of the boundary line of the building. And that's quite a distance to be able to see even over a 5-foot high fence. And there's a buffer of, I think, approximately 25-foot buffer in the southern part of the property. Also, we're very willing to discuss a right turn only on Clinton, an exit right turn only, which I think would ameliorate some of the concerns that I heard tonight. And we can talk to the planning department about moving that exit possibly further north if that makes sense. We certainly have no objection to that. So I just wanted to make them know that, we've heard what they have to say, and we can definitely take that into consideration.
I would just say in terms of North Clinton, if the project were to go forward, I would suggest possibly just a fire crash gate and no access for anyone to use North Clinton to enter into the development. I'm not sure if you said something, want to go on the record with something? Okay.
No,
that would be one of the conditions if it did in fact go forward based upon some of the comments Mr. Fujari made about in terms of limiting who could possibly go in there, the hours of operation, the other discussions. But I, understand what they're saying, that it's a cut through with that no turn on red there and people cut through there. Adding any more traffic to that block, I think is unnecessary and unwarranted. So I would, if I was going to support it, that would have to be closed, that entrance on North Clinton. I would not support it with an entrance on North Clinton.
Definitely something we'll consider and speak to our client about, but I just wanted to be clear that North Fifth Avenue is divided, which means that anybody who's heading north on would have to go and make a U-turn to then head south to be able to make a right into the property. So we would be happy to move that driveway as far north as we can in, conjunction with Suffolk County DPW allowing us, as they do have jurisdiction of that corner. But if possible, perhaps we can just have an entrance, or we can, work with staff and DPW to provide something that would make sense so we don't have, people having to make U-turns in parking lots and gas stations and so forth to be able to access the site properly.
It's just how many parking
My
spaces?
professional opinion, that's all.
I guess my question for Sean is when you're saying the parking relaxation, you're saying some spots do not meet. So what percentage, or have you guys evaluated the parking spots that Mr. Colgan spoke about?
I feel that all of the parking spots are suitable. I'm happy to review with Sean and with staff which ones they particularly have a concern with. If the board's willing to grant us a relaxation, we're happy to remove those as land banked. But as stated, we don't feel like they'll ever need to be built based on the traffic study, the report from the traffic consultant of the town. So they're there for count, for being able to meet the code and not have the board.
Yeah. And my concern would be one is, I'm familiar with the shopping center across the street. When Coils is busy, people are parking all over the place. Not to have medical clients or patients parking out in the street. That's why I want to make sure there's
I would
ample
think
parking.
people that want to go to that shopping center are going to end up parking in our parking lot. I think so. It's going to end up happening. I don't think it'll be the other way.
I want to make sure you have enough parking spots to accommodate the people in your shop, in your medical office parking lot.
Yes.
There is no relaxation. That's my point
Yes.
I was making regarding that. And the other
Yeah,
thing
and I
is,
would add, I mean, just from, the building is such, 2 stories, there's an elevator room, there's a staircase. So if you do look at it, I know parking is based on gross floor area, but if you look at it more as usable floor area, you can consider, 10% of each floor not being part of that need. And I think that's probably where the traffic generation and parking generation numbers are coming from as well.
we can look at that. I mean, my whole point with how many parking spots there are is even if you move it further north, that's still 67 potential cars that are either coming in onto North Clinton, slowing down traffic, or whatever the case may be, as they're pulling in and out of it, making a more dangerous roadway. So I would, again, if I'm going to support it, one of the conditions would be, from my perspective, I'm only one board member, would that entrance be closed and be a fire gate, only, fire access only. The other thing would be just for the neighbors to the immediate south of where your entrance and exit is on Fifth Avenue. I'm not sure how close it is to that driveway just to the south of it. I'd want to see that as well, so there's no impact on that house that's right to the immediate south. But I haven't looked at it. I just spoke to Sean about that. It's something I'll look at just to make sure people entering and exiting off of
I think it's
Fifth
about
Avenue don't have an
45
impact on the neighbor.
Yep.
That's there. Again, you heard comments regarding types of trees and landscaping and the rest if the project were to go forward, to make sure that there is proper screening that is there for everyone that keeps this as residential feel. And the other question I posed to Mr. Colgan, maybe you can answer this, is the height of the building you're proposing versus what's permitted as a residential height of a house. Does it exceed the height of a residential house that's permitted in that zone? I mean, you can answer it later if you don't have the answer now. My only point I would make there is that if it were to exceed the height of a residential house in that zone, I would not support it either. While you're looking for that,
It would meet the residential code. It's
Okay.
2 stories, I think residential is 25, so it would
Residential.
28, yeah.
so it would not go higher than 28 feet.
We're not sure the residential code requirement, that's what we're,
Okay, so you would not exceed it,
have
because
that
this, what I'm reading on here would possibly exceed what a residential code is, why I'm asking the question.
Yes, some of the zones are 35, so it'll probably be 35.
So it's what is it? 28
yeah,
is the code for residential, so it would not exceed 28, or you're saying you'd want 35?
it would be, yeah, it would be 35.
That would just be another concern that I would have. Mr. Ruggieri?
Oh, just a comment with regard to the parking. I mean, before I said that medical office use is a wide term, and that impacts the parking as well. There are some medical office uses that are very parking intensive, and some, like, say, if it was an imaging center, you're seeing one patient every hour or more, so you'll be less dependent on parking spaces. So that's why the uses are so critical here.
And again, it's a corner property. If one of the residents said it, I mean, if houses were to go there, they'd probably become rental, because a lot of people are not going to want to live on that corner, right directly on that corner.
agree with
However, we need to put something there that is going to work for the residents and the neighbors that are on that block to make it work all the way around.
Yeah, and I agree with Sean, single-family homes just doesn't make sense there.
Right.
It really doesn't.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Matamore?
I'd like to make a couple of comments. You've all expressed your concerns, and almost all of you are from North Clinton, which is a block that I spent a lot of time on as a kid. And that piece was Gosio's farm back in the 50s. And it was a busy sales farm. It faced Howells Road, the sales area faced Howells Road, and there were people in all the time. And I'm just giving some historical perspective to it. And the comments, it's interesting that at one time it was quasi commercial, although a farm is usually residentially zoned. But it was a very popular place here on the South Shore for buying fresh vegetables, and it was a farm for 20 or 25 years. But I wanted to make a comment that you're right in the beginning of a process, that you don't know what the uses might be, what the design might be, where the curb cuts may be suggested. The applicant has heard your comments and your concerns, and the problems are not with Howells Road or Fifth Avenue. The problems are that you're a very residential street, very well respected one. Your houses, some of them go back 100 years. It's one of the old sections in Bayshore. Just as a comment and as a thought, it's always a good idea to know what you might get and what you might not get, or be able to suggest things that the applicant can meet that you would be happy with. I point out my wife and I go to all the medical uses that are over next to the hospital. We live in Islip, or go the other way. And I would think there may be an advantage to knowing eventually, when hopefully you know what the medical uses are, to have a medical use like that. The looks of a medical building, if you go and look at the medical buildings over near Good Sam, or indeed now Northwell, they're manicured to the fullest. They have people who do all the flowers and the landscaping and the trees and everything else. We don't know yet here on this board what they're going to try and propose. Now that you've let your feelings be known that you're a very residential street, North Clinton Avenue, and you want that taken into consideration. The comments, I think, are well taken. Four houses on that property is not going to be, first of all, they haven't sold in, almost 30 years as residential property. And from what our staff just said, the change of zone went from Residence B to a business zoning 30 years ago. So it was clear that the idea of the property being utilized as residential is not very popular anymore. It is a hub of commercialism with, of course, ice cream, as the chairman mentioned, across the street. The firehouse went in now 30 or 40 years ago. It's been a long time since that's been there. I worked at that Suffolk County Water Authority, so I know what that's about on Fifth Avenue. So I'm very familiar with the area, and it is a hub of sorts, with too much traffic, albeit. But this kind of an application will take all those things into consideration, feed them into our process as best as we can, and see what is the best thing we can suggest to an applicant that we can perhaps negotiate and make it better. And taking into consideration as best can be the fact that it's a residential street with children and the like. So whether it's signage or speed bumps or whatever it might be, that process hasn't even been done yet. They haven't had a chance to come up with suggestions. So I'm sort of saying it's not a bad idea from your perspective, I think, to hear what it's going to be, because the idea of 4 houses or more, that hasn't even been figured out, may not be the best answer. And particularly on a piece of property that has a lot of traffic to deal with regard to noise and traffic and concerns for accidents in that intersection of Howells and Fifth, and much less Clinton, unfortunately, but that's your concern. You don't want it to spill over in your neighborhood. Maybe something can be worked out that will be better than it is today. So I would suggest to you let the process evolve. And we certainly hear you. We know what your concerns are, and hopefully the staff here and the applicant can come up with a proposal. And as I say, take a look at any of the medical uses around the town of Islip. They are spectacularly manicured and taken care of. But they have to obviously also address what you're all concerned about, which is the safety of your children and the neighborhood and the traffic on North Clinton Avenue particularly. So
Thank you, Mr. Matt. Oh,
thanks.
sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matt. The other thing I just going to ask staff to do is if you would at least ask traffic safety to go out to that street. We looked at it on the map here. I mean, it's where to put a stop sign, and it would be somewhat problematic because the street is so far down. It is a long stretch, but certainly I've heard your concerns this evening, so we'll ask traffic safety to take a look. I don't know what they can do. And child at play sign I heard as well, so we'll just ask them to go take a look at that and report back to us at the next meeting. And hopefully you guys can work with planning staff. You've heard the concerns of the community. You've heard our concerns on the board. We don't want to tell you it's no, but there are concerns that I think just you need to address.
Yeah, of course, we appreciate it, especially Mr. Matamore's comments, and we'll work with the planning department.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'd make a motion.
Mr. Matamore.
I move to close this hearing and reserve decision so we can work these these ideas out as best we can. And indeed, if you folks have any concerns about how that's developing, you can call the planning department and they'll let you know what the next step might be. But it's probably going to be some time while we work to see if we can come up with a acceptable solution.
Mr. Matamore, I'm only going to go to the beginning part of that motion, which is close the public hearing and reserve decision. I can't remember the rest. Repeat. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions, or reserved? Thank you. Item 8, we already heard, so it's going to be item 9 on the agenda, site plan modification decision item. Josh Seiden, SP 2022-049, south side of Beaver Dam Road, 400 feet west of Islip Avenue, New York Route 111, Islip 0 Beaver Dam Road. Applicant requests parking and landscaping relaxation in connection with the construction of a new one-story warehouse building. Good evening.
Somebody's still here.
I can welcome your introduction. I can ask Mr. Gonzalez to do a staff report and come back with questions, however you want to handle it.
I mean, I'm happy not to have to speak too much, so staff report, fire away, and I'll respond.
So why don't I go to Mr. Gonzalez to give us a staff report, and then we'll come back if we have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This industrial one zone property is currently unimproved. The proposal is for the construction of a new one-story, 10,000 square foot warehouse building, along with related parking and site improvements. The 2 relaxations being requested are a 3-stall parking relaxation, 16 are required, 13 provided, and a front yard landscaping relaxation, 50% required, a little over 38% provided. Per the applicant's representative, the overall layout and proposal was designed in such a way to balance the industrial use of the property with the proximity to the residences to the south. Overhead doors for the facility are oriented away from the residences to the south and will face the industrial property to the west. Parking is located on that westerly side of the building as well. A full 25-foot planted buffer will be provided to the south behind the building, as well as green space of approximately a total of 50 feet, which includes a planted rain garden between the building and the buffer. The building will also be only 25 feet tall, which is well under the maximum permitted 60 feet for the zone, and even shorter than the maximum 28 feet for a single-family residence in Res B. The 3-stall parking relaxation for warehouse use is minimal. The plan is providing all green space in the front yard other than the required sidewalk and drive aisle. However, in an effort to push the building as far away from the residences to the south as possible, relaxation on that front yard requirement can't be avoided. Staff has no issue with the request as the location towards Beaver Dam Road is more beneficial. A variance from the ZBA will be required for the proposed front yard setback, 25 proposed, 50 required. And the proposal is also improving the southerly side of the Beaver Dam Road terminus, which currently lacks a proper turnaround. So based on that, staff recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Any questions from the board? Is there a motion? Is the applicant in agreement with the covenants and restrictions?
Yes, Chairman, we reviewed them with the client, and he has no objection. I'll also note for the record that we received some comments from Ms. Wozniak on architecturals, and we've already incorporated those, so moving right along.
Mr. Moriarty.
I'd make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to grant the application subject to CNRs.
It's a motion by Mr. Moriarty to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Michael Pontillo, SP 2023-019, 221 Carlton Avenue, Central Islip. Applicant requests site plan modification to allow building permits to be filed prior to site plan approval. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, Mr. LaSquadra.
Very nice to see you all. This is a rather, I'm sorry. Stephen LaSquadra, 649 Route 25A, Rocky Point, New York, on behalf of the applicant. Good evening again. This is a rather straightforward application, very focused in nature. With respect to the request to be able to allow building permits to be filed prior to site plan approval. The request is very particular to the circumstances of this matter, certainly very unique in this regard, not something that would be broad-based or we believe applicable to any other circumstance or any other type of application, but rather unique and particular to the circumstances and facts that the applicant confronts here, which are as follows. As you recall, this is an application that was brought forward with a lot of community involvement. There was much outreach back and forth. And the development concerns an area which is, by all accounts, and as fairly well known, economically distressed in part. And there was a great desire on behalf of the community here to see a supermarket come as part and parcel of the development that's being brought forward. Particularly, the applicant took great pains to bring in an Aldi that would be the supermarket that would come to the site. It does turn out that the supermarket Aldi is a multinational corporation and has expressed great concern to the applicant, to the town, in fact, about its ability to move forward on a timely basis, and has said that perhaps, and has said this in actually fairly strong terms, that perhaps it may not be able to move forward if it could not have building plans reviewed on a parallel basis, or at least in anticipation of the site plan review, given its own internal needs and funding. Clearly, we want Aldi to stay. The applicant has invested heavily in bringing Aldi as part of the applicant's commitment to the community. The community is invested in seeing Aldi, and I think everyone in general believes that this is a benefit to the community, and we wish to see that commitment and that promise, if you will, honored. So allowing this to happen is for that very limited purpose, and that is the nature of our application, and only on that basis.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Colgan for a staff report. We'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to summarize, the purpose of the requirement that Mr. Squadro is asking a waiver from is that, site plan approval prior to the filing of building permit is to verify that buildings and associated development will be in their final locations and forms before a building plans examiner reviews it. Because if the site plan changes, the building permit might change, and we try to avoid wasting town resources and reviewing applications that ultimately cannot be constructed. At this time, after a cursory review of the site plan, it's not anticipated that the proposed supermarket will move. However, the applicant runs the risk that any material changes to the location, dimensions, or configuration of the supermarket may ultimately affect the project timeline and application fees associated with this project. The staff acknowledges that this is not a typical request. However, given that the supermarket is an essential use and is within an economically distressed community with a shortage of these services, the staff does not oppose this request.
Any questions from the staff? For the staff? For the applicant? Mr. Moriarty?
I understand the situation, but I'm somewhat concerned about the precedential nature of this. Have we done this before, Sean, that you're aware of? And if so, under what circumstances? And more importantly, if we grant this evening, how do we protect ourselves that we don't have a line of folks at the podium in the next couple of years asking for the same relief?
Understood. So we did review this with legal counsel with the town, but they stressed that this does not serve as a precedent per se. Again, given the nature of the project, it's within the PDD, it's where development has been requested and is desired. This is an essential use. This isn't a restaurant or, this is something we all would go to. Everyone needs, it was essential service during something like COVID. So it's not like it's a luxury thing that the applicant is just going to make money off of. It's also in an economically distressed community where they do struggle with tax base. And we want to support all the positive outcomes that we have had from the PDD. And we think Mr. Puntillo's project overall is a component of that. But more specifically, this use is a understood need of the community. So that's how we're parsing it out. I wouldn't recommend this for any run-of-the-mill application. If another one comes our way, we'll deal with it on a case-by-case basis. But again, because it's not that common a request, I don't think we're going to see this too many times.
Any further questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
No, sir, but thank you.
Is there a motion? Mr. Frugieri?
I'll make a motion, we close this hearing and grant this application.
It's a motion by Mr. Frugieri to grant the application. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it's granted.
Thank you very much again.
Item 11 on the agenda. I'm not sure if the applicant is here. Menino Brothers, 1575 Realty Corp. PB 2022-025, north side of Montauk Highway, State Route 27A, approximately 100 feet east of Forbes Street, Oakdale, 1575 Montauk Highway. Applicant requests a modification of planning board special permit conditions associated with PB 2016-028 in order to expand the existing restaurant. Site plan modification may also be requested as part of the application. Ms. Wozniak, do they want to go forward without being here and have you do the staff report? Yes, well, I certainly do if they did not agree to everything that was put on the record and I asked at the public hearing. Okay, so unless somebody here wants to hear this, I would move that we adjourn this one. No, and I don't think they've complied with everything we asked for, correct? Oh. We'll take a quick look outside and then we'll go off the record. The applicant is not here. We do have questions for the applicant, so I think we'll adjourn this. Is there a motion to adjourn this item?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Matamore to adjourn, second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor, opposed, abstentions, this matter is adjourned. Ms. Cruz?
I make a motion to end the meeting.
Motion by Ms. Cruz to end the meeting. Is there a second to ending the meeting? Mr. Matamore, all in favor, opposed, abstentions, we are ended.
You're in. You're in.
Kaput.